player to be a fan of, except for the fact that he's not quite advancing far enough to cheer for him long enough, basically, you know? Trying to choose someone that you hope will at least make it to the round of 16, so you can kind of cheer for them multiple times, and well, Fantasy just hasn't been to that point yet, but he is a great player to watch for the same reason that Bly is a great player to watch, and because of that, which I'll explain soon, I'm hoping this will be, at the very least, an interesting series. In the top left was the orange Zerg. It is Bly. That's the wrong button. In the bottom right, as the blue Terran, he is Fantasy. I hate when I mess up the game hard overlay. Because yesterday, this overlay was like properly placed. It was pretty good. Not anymore. Alright, so, let's talk about these two players. TLDR, they both play a little weird. Bly's opening with a pool first, but that's not weird. We'll see what he do with it. Bly is maybe more inclined to do the Nidus Worms, the all-ins, the... Yeah, basically that. Sometimes he goes for like really fast Hive, which is almost the opposite of, right, of cheesy all-in-y, but in a way it's kind of cheesy. But he usually gets, you know, gives really good games. He's a scrappy playstyle sometimes as well. You know, he goes for the odd choice when no one else would opt to defend, forces base races, all that good stuff. He, I guess, is stylistically, like, overall, right, one of the weirder players. Fantasy, I want to say, is more based around his builds being a little different than others. Otherwise, like, when you see him play just a regular bio game, it's rather normal. When you see him play a regular mech game, it's much like what other Terrans are doing. But he has a variety of build orders, and his micro is, I think, what he always considers his strong suit. So speaking of, right, like a variety of build orders, we do have something we don't see very often, which is a command center first. It's totally viable, really, and I'm not sure the exact reason as to why Terrans don't do it. I think there was a time where Roach Ravager would have screwed you over if you had tried it, but let's be real, like, command center first has not been a real consistent thing since it was a 14cc back in Heart of the Swarm. But it's funny because, you know, these early pools are actually negated by a command center first. The one downside, I suppose, is that the Reaper is, I guess, a little bit later, so that if it was a 2-base follow-up of a Roach Ravager, maybe that slight timing does hurt you. If it was a Speedling attack, you would still lose control of your natural, and, I mean, that still happens whether you go for 1x Expander or command center, so I'm still not certain if that's really the reason. But as you saw, the Lings, they waited, but even if they didn't wait, they would not have reached the command center in near enough time to get a stop on it, much less a cancel. But by being sneaky, they can try and get an SCV or two, and that's exactly what happens. The Reaper is forced over to the right side, thinking those were the only two Lings. Nope, it wasn't. These two Lings managed to get maybe even 2 SCVs. It got awfully close, and are disturbing Fantasy's micro here and there. Ooh. Very, very close to losing that second SCV, but there's a lot of time it wasn't mining. So this is still good stuff for Bly's opener. Behind this, he gets a third hatchery, all good stuff. Parasite, I mentioned that, you know, Fantasy, I'm already kind of predicting a mech build, because Fantasy can definitely do mech or bio. Sometimes, depending on what meta, it's literally 50-50. He goes for a fast 3rd CC, so he won't know quite yet, but usually with a fast 3rd CC, we do see a lot of just, like, instantly adding tech labs to barracks for that stim, so you really get ramped up to the drops, the pushes as fast as possible. So, okay. Just as I noted it, he does throw down a factory, so it is in fact going to be mech. Reason being that I kind of predicted this is that Parasite, what the hell is that about? Parasite has shown itself to be good for mech. You know, it's a long map, so that's kind of the first thing you look at, and that doesn't necessarily lend itself to mech play. The way that you get your bases, your 5 bases are kind of easy, as we see a bunch of Lings waiting. This base is easy to wall up, and even if it's not walled, it still chokes that roaches have to go through. And your other bases, hopefully, you've held on well enough that you have enough tanks to take the other 2 bases. Now this is really annoying because Fantasy did send all of his Hellions forward, but it's a little less annoying than it could have been because he is going mech and he's not stopping making Hellions. Where if he was going on a bio, he would have swapped off the reactor already potentially. It's still sex. Oh my god, I'm actually saying everything wrong. Sexy SCVs. It's 6 SCVs going down on top of the one from just earlier. 7, almost 7. Bly in control of this game. Quick check back on his side of the map. His third base has been done for a while at 46 drones. Scan reveals. I'm thinking he was trying to see exactly what tech it was. Maybe even if he was lucky, the natural is being used to make the lair. Doesn't really see a whole lot, just the roach worm being slapped down, which now that Bly knows it's mech is the maybe obvious choice. The lair has started, but is only about halfway done. Third base is a little open for grabs. More lings run into the natural. They're going to kill a couple SCVs, but perhaps Fantasy going to kill more drones. Just a couple of queens to do the DPS is not going to tear down these Hellions very fast, but a couple of good SimCity evolution chambers helps those drones out, and suddenly more lings flood through, and Fantasy's almost, you know, open opportunity to kill drones doesn't work out. Good micro here from Bly. Fantasy just, you know, on creep. You can't really micro too much with Hellions, so he was just out of luck. Once those lings appeared, once the drones didn't get all types of barbecued. After defending that attack, Bly instantly goes back into 16, 18 drones. He will be up to 62. And all said and done, probably on his way to a fourth base. He is going into roaches, but he is also adding on that spire. So Fantasy hopefully is going to have some means to defend against that. But most Terran players nowadays are going right into the Cyclone stuff, which I think is just a phase. It's not a phase, Mom. I think it is. As it was the last time Cyclones were similar to what they are now, which was like 2 or 3 years ago. Eventually, the Zerg players will die to it too often. Protoss players aren't dying to it anymore, actually, despite what I think was like a couple of weeks of it being obnoxious. And we'll all go back to just the more typical mech, which is the tanks. But for the time being, we do see a lot of variations with the ultimate goal to get into the Cyclone Hellbat, Blue Flame, whatever this upgrade's called for the Cyclones. And then you are able to be a little more aggressive than that tank mech, right? You can be more active on the map, and it does also save you from any surprise mutas. Not that usual tank mech style didn't have a couple of Thors in a decent amount of time. It's been a long time since I've seen pro mech players die to just a surprise muta transition, but it does happen. It certainly won't happen when you have Cyclones. You just simply don't beat them out. But you know what we saw Saturday, I believe it was? Not Sunday, Saturday. We saw Cure get a decent-sized army with decent double upgrades, which is what Fantasy's going for. Was it easy? And then run on a creep and die to Ling Bane Ling Muta. So the mutas don't seem like they're that great, and I guess Bly isn't going Ling Bane, he's doing roaches. And you know, maybe they'll distract Fantasy a little too much, get damage here and there, and just overall be as annoying as they should be at the count of 8s. I'm guessing what, maybe average 8 mutas get 10 SCVs off the over the course of their life, something like that. So there's that wall I was talking about. If you did build 2 tanks, it'd suddenly be a very good wall, but basically Fantasy is making up for any, you know, just, oh, this is an automatic defense by being active on the map. He's finding all these roaches anyways. We will have the complication of Tunneling Claws to deal with. I guess we being the Terran players, but Fantasy will have that. The mutas find an open pocket because Fantasy felt so confident against the roaches. He was keeping tabs on that. He wasn't keeping tabs on any other units that could be making their way across the map. So boom, instantly 10 SCVs go down. Main base is going to be under fire, and these mutas are absolutely worth the cost of the Spire. And the time, I guess, it took to get there, absolutely worth. One goes down, the rest will go down eventually once the Cyclones find them. But that is the trick, as they have this nice big air gap where they can run away from the Cyclones. Scan reveals just a lair so far with the Hydro Stem being put down. I think there was a bit of a fear that, one, he could see more mutas popping out, right? And he's like suddenly really afraid to try to build more missile turrets, maybe even some Widow Mines. Or, you know, the more obvious thing to be scared of is the Hive. An infestation being thrown down, something like that. Which it is, and Fantasy did miss, but he knows it's going to be a little while till he has to worry about, I'm going to guess, Brood Lords, not so much Ultras. So Bly is controlling this side of the map fairly well. Fantasy is only just now adding on this 4th CC, which I think, you know, he really could have done a lot sooner. But maybe he was hoping to have more of an aggressive attack. Oh, really nicely done. He sees the roaches and takes out a good chunk of them before Bly packs it up and goes home. Another scan. I think Bly is hoping to run out of scans, but Fantasy has not been muling that much, despite losing those SCVs, I guess. Another scan. There you go. Now, Burrow does break the lock-on regardless of the scan. Oh, wait, does it? Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe if it's still a scan, like, that's why he's not bothering to burrow, because he knows that it won't matter. And in this case, against Cyclones, they will not out-heal the DPS, that's for sure. But maybe, just maybe, Fantasy's out of scans now. And oh, really nicely done. He catches the Cyclones, exactly the Cyclones, not the Hellions that had fallen a little bit far behind. So instantly the Cyclones go down. Really nice catch for Bly, who suddenly, the Telling Claws are all worth it. I think his mute is still alive too, speaking of worth it. Like, everything Bly has chosen to do had a couple of maybes, like, well, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. And so far they have worked out almost every single time. Roach is collapsing in from both sides. Fantasy is severely down on that Cyclone count. He lost so many just a minute ago. He lost 14. Imagine 14 more Cyclones right now. A total of 20 Cyclones. That takes on most armies, even if it's completely surrounded. Maybe not like a ton of Banelings, but you get my point. They also have a couple of upgrades, so it's not like they're flimsy. Like, Fantasy could have been taking this on. Now has to be a little bit careful because he lost so many. The Infestation Pit was used for the Hive, but it's now also being used for the Swarm Hosts. Something that I didn't really think about, because we're up against Cyclone Mech, not Tank Mech, but I guess it could work. The danger being that you pop the Locust and the Cyclones find you, you really aren't getting out of there. You really aren't. But the definite upside of Swarm Host is that if you do have the Terran corralled, any type of Terran corralled, then they're going to get multiple waves of Locust, and they're going to get damaged, basically no matter what. Whether it's a command center, which would be great, or just a couple of supply depots, a couple of Hellions, they're going to get that damage. So just continuing the control over the game. Bly has got some okay creep spread, but he's not really had to worry about having too much. He's got 5 bases, which is far more important. He's getting a bit of a bank. He's got a greater spire. Maybe he could have gone for double upgrades, I guess, being nitpicky here, but already on a greater spire and having Fantasy only just take his 4th base, that seems like a good sign to me. It's a good sign. Now, Fantasy's finally trying to get some harassment in, something he hasn't been able to do in the last, like, 6 minutes. He's not going to see anything, too revealing. Maybe he's... I don't know whether he's happy or sad that there was only a few drones here. Overall, Bly is 68, which is certainly good. Oh, did he see this? You can see burrowed units. Oh, well, now he sees that, obviously. But he's not paying attention to the units, so 3 Cyclones get trapped along with a Hellion. Nice little use of the Locust there, and they could just stay burrowed. I'm not sure he realized what went down, how that happened. A Raven is made, and there's nothing that Bly can do about that Raven unless he makes a couple of Corruptors or gets Hydras, right? The Swarm Hosts are just going to stay in that position as they were not found out. Or maybe I mean, it's more likely that Fantasy knew they were there, but he just realized he couldn't take time to defend because he had roaches on his butt. Either way, they are going to continue to add damage. Oh, boy. As soon as he moves over to the right side to try and take care of those Swarm Hosts, Roaches coming to the left side, but a single tank and a couple of buffer units seem to be enough. The Swarm Hosts burrow again outside, just outside of that Raven's vision range, I guess. That's really unfortunate. And it looks like finally Bly does break the 4th base. Good use of all these units. I mean, it's micro, right? Like he's been pretty good about consistently burrowing them, evaluating the situation, getting out of dodge before it was too late. But it is certainly working out. And he has not had to worry about a push like this until now, which is the most important thing. And by now, he has Broodlords. These Broodlords are not upgraded compared to what is now almost going to be 2/2 Cyclones with their upgrade. But if you have enough on the ground, maybe a couple Fungals as well, or you just purely have enough Broodlords and Broodlings to make sure they never get close to you, well, the Cyclones will never get close to you. Like, that's, there's multiple ways to do it, but that's the end results, and whoever you get there is a good thing for the Zerg player. And honestly, Cyclones really should never be in range of the Broodlords. They're kind of flimsy, and even with a lot of Hellions with Blue Flame on top of them, I wouldn't have a lot of faith. Looks like Fantasy finally took care of those Swarm Hosts. Only 1 lives, and it's kind of just a waste of supply now. Bly has gone fully into just Hydras beyond this, by the way. Like, I mean, whenever you see Roaches go down, do remember that Roaches are not that expensive, considering especially how much Bly's gotten away with on his side of the map. So I'm having to cancel his 5th base again. So he was able to go into Broodlords and upgrades and a lot of Hydras, and he will take care of any air army that Fantasy tries to get. But the trick is, Fantasy's not going for an air army. Fantasy is just trying to bully his way forward. He's forcing Bly to come back home. Bly thought he's going to go for a kill move, and instead has to go across a very long map with very slow units. And the Cyclones are currently ripping his economy apart. That is a fairly important 4th base after losing his 5th. And the drones are not over to his 6th quite yet, which also could be taken out here as the Cyclones go over. Bly could replace every single base given time. Oh, nice catch on the site. Or the infestors. Oh, he gets both infestors. Really nicely done. And Bly could replace all these hatcheries. He could. He has 1,600 minerals here, and he's still somewhat close to max because the chunk of his army, these broodlords, have not died, nor have the queens. But he has to be a little careful. Things have really spun on him after having control of the game for the first 14 minutes. In the last minute and a half, things have gone Fantasy's way as he starts to use the mobility. He's somewhat comfortable on his 4 bases, although not really. He's actually mining out of his 3rd very soon and will want a 5th, but he could always let this orbital do that as long as Bly is not attacking him. And Bly, who had the mobile units, who was harassing him, who was calling the shots quite correctly, now has a very slow, vulnerable army, you know, with the Hydras being the chunk of his mobile army, and they're even not even that mobile, right? That could die if they're not paired up all together. Now, once Bly takes care of everything, if he ever takes care of everything, he could go across the map, start the big march of the air army. Well, it's not really marching, is it? You get my point, the flapping of the air army, and he might win. He might. But he also might be forced into a base race, of which Fantasy has enough time to get enough air units, and his units get all apart from each other, so that suddenly Cyclones are killing Broodlords, and they really shouldn't be, so on and so forth. Terrans are the better race when things get scrappy, so you never base race a Terran, is always the old saying, even though it's not 100% true. And Fantasy might be the better scrappier player. It's a really weird thing to say. If it was any other player, I'd probably be calling Bly the better scrappier player. But while Fantasy might not have ever reached the heights he did in StarCraft 2, that he did in his Brood War career, he was scrappy in Brood War as well. He has more experience being a scrappy pro gamer than even Bly, who plays in a heck of a lot of stuff. Seems like maybe Bly has things under control. Today's just not a good day for talking. The Raven is sniped and it was full energy, so that's a little bit of an ouchie. Not even an anti-armor missile to help out. He's keeping his units at home though, so now this is time for Fantasy to say, okay, like I don't have to worry about being attacked, I can continue expanding, I'm already adding on a bunch of starports, a lot of Vikings, and now he's no longer worried about dying to the Broodlord army as much as he is worried about continuing to play the rest of the game. Just draw the rest of the flipping out. But I think as far as the rest of the game goes, I am feeling a lot more confident for Fantasy. I mean, really just the pace of things have changed. It's changed dramatically. With Fantasy suddenly splitting up his army, with Bly suddenly going for the Broodlords. Now I say that, and some of you might be hearing me say that and say, you know, think that I'm trying to say that he shouldn't have gone for Broodlords, and that's absolutely not the case. In fact, when, you know, the first time he added those Broodlords on, I was talking about, oh my god, are you serious? Are you really so many transfuses? Oh my god! Oh my god. Well, that happens. Anyways, I was, commending the Broodlord choice. I was saying that was a good choice. But it is the case that, you know, if they identify how slow your army is, then they could take advantage of it, and that's absolutely what Fantasy has done. Now, Bly is supposed to go for more infestors, right? Those 2 earlier on died with a lot of energy. But they are being targeted, Cyclones have got that range, and even though Fungal slows, it doesn't stop anymore. So they can still get some last sits on those infestors, and that is potentially not a trade that Bly wants to do. Bly has used up his entire bank, trying to replace all these hatcheries. He's now lost 15 more workers, so they're both down to some modest worker counts, but of course Fantasy has mules. That was not his main or natural orbital, so there's just another one that he thought he was safe enough to use, and he is absolutely right in thinking that. He is now the one all over the map. He doesn't have creep spread, I guess, but he's the one all over the map. And even with just a single tank, it looks like he'll be able to defend against this. Now, it seems that he doesn't have the upgrades for the planetary yet. No, he doesn't. He gets high-sec auto-tracking. Actually, this might be the one map where it doesn't take care of these roaches. But a tank will, so that does it too. Still a little annoying, but he's maneuvering around the map, gonna get some revenge on this very, very low hatchery. That had like 15 chance fuses into it. Had to have been 15, probably more. And that is another blow to Bly's economy. Now, Bly is still probably thinking that he's in a good shape with this Broodlord army, right? Like, think about the mentality of being corralled in like he's been. You're trying to send out whatever Q-tumors you can just to have vision on the map, something to say that you're out on the map. And you have a strong Broodlord army. But at this point, you know they have a 5th base. They got their 4th base back to mining. You're probably also figuring they're going to have some type of air army to deal with. Unless he's too tunnel visioned on dealing with all these cyclones, which is very possible. But I think he included some Vipers. Yeah, he did. And should Fantasy ever move out with the might of his army, Bly could still take the engagement. As bad as things are looking, as far as his hatcheries and economy goes, the fight could still go either way. I would certainly like to see Bly do more to try and get his position on the map. And I don't mean moving out with his Broodlords, because we all saw how that went down. But, and this is really hard to do because he only has so much supply to work with. But like something like, Nidus Worms, Ling Run-Bys, that type of stuff. Because Fantasy is mostly moving out with 2 sets of armies. So, again, you have to play very well. I'm not saying this is super easy to do, but it is something where, like, this could have easily been run by Lings should they have avoided the main bulk of the army. And Fantasy would have to have as much APM spent on defending his own economy as Bly has had in the last 8 minutes of this game. But Bly could also just all in on the Broodlord idea. Right? Just like, I'm going to win the air war. Eventually, you'll have to come to me, and I'm going to win it, I'm going to dominate it, and I'm going to counter while you're building up your army that is no longer that fast to replace. Corrupt Cyclones can't be reactored out. And I will win based off of that single attack. And then it's not a bad idea. I'm fairly certain Bly has won similar games by doing this. Games that I've cast even, and then add on however many games he plays otherwise. This is a lot of Fantasy's army, but it's still not the full might of it. He is missing all of his air, so this is never the true... He's never showing his true strength to Bly. I have Liberators being added on now. I guess Fantasy, instead of just rushing forward with all of his army at one point, is going to do the slow siege hop forward. As well as Liberators being useful for defense. They're just, in general, pretty good units. He's getting a decent number of them. More drones go down. Drones going down is not the worst thing anymore for Bly. There was that point where he was literally out of money rebuilding all his hatcheries, but they're both at that point where they're mining pretty consistently again. Now, he's not at a comfortable bank for a Zerg player, so you will, he's having to pay attention to his drone count, and 53 isn't super comfortable, but now we have to consider how much he's just mining, right? He's no longer mining from here. I'm surprised he's even building spore crawlers and spines over here. He's about to run out of gas, so it really doesn't seem that useful. And this is also starting to get mined out. So he doesn't even have enough mineral patches to spread around his workers. Maybe if he gets this top right base, both of them, he'll go back up to 65, 70. Maybe. Huh. This is a much longer game than I was expecting. Bly had a solid 12-minute start. Fantasy with the next 12 minutes going his way. I mean, alrighty then. What the hell? I'm wondering why he scanned that. I guess he was making sure it wasn't like 5 roaches or infestors or something, I guess. I don't know. I thought the missile turret saw it, so I don't know. Whatever. Whatever. More upgrades are on the way, and as you can see, Bly has just utilized his entire bank in getting all those. So that's why, like I said, it wasn't a comfortable bank. It really isn't. Liberators are providing a fairly solid siege hop forward. The spore crawlers are a little bit nasty, severely weakened a couple of the Liberators, killed some of them too. The Cyclones have enough range to tear them out. Vipers are going to go for the Parasitic Bomb, actually. Alright. They could have gone for the Abducts as well, but... Actually, could they have? Maybe not. I think a lot of the Liberators would still be shooting at the Hydras, even if he abducted. Nice catch on a very large portion of the Cyclone army. They last-ditch attempt to kill a couple of Broodlords. Doesn't really work out, but now the Broodlords are the ones that are left alone. Where's the rest of Bly's army? It comes forward here. Anti-air missile on top of every single Broodlord will make them die a lot quicker to all of these Vikings and maybe even the Cyclones. But the rest of Bly's ground army is something to be dealt with here. He does finally abduct. Now that the most Liberators are gone, nothing to protect the ones that are abducted. Easy peasy, snipes on all of those. Another anti-air missile, but we all know that doesn't really do damage anymore. It was, I think, more of just like a shoo, get away while I go ahead and recover from this. And it is something that Fantasy has to recover from. He lost most of his ground army, although his air army, both of their air armies are still going strong. We have the additional upgrades on the way for Fantasy as well, so again, neither of them really banking a ton. Fantasy will start banking a ton, though, should Bly not stop these bases from going up, and I'm really worried that's what's going to happen here, as all the focus is over to the right side. I guess Bly could get the very top right, sure, but then Fantasy suddenly gets these left 2 bases, as well as even maybe this one. I'm really afraid of that happening. Yeah, additional upgrades, air upgrades, high sec auto tracking. Does he have building armor already? He does. It finished just a couple seconds ago. As well as transformation servos to make sure that his Hellions can turn to Hellbats at a moment's notice. And if he ever does go into Thors, they can also transform really quickly. Planetary does go down, even with the Brood, even with the armor. Building armor, that's what I was going for. Loses 1 or 2 Broodlords off the back of that, I suppose. But really nice split here on the Vikings means that they're still good to go defensively. Cyclones, we're looking for a little bit of a run by. Again, not a very important base to take down. This base is a little more important. Even the gas is kind of important. That does not falter. Bly has really got to start thinking about taking out these bases, but I'm afraid now that they're planetaries, he's going to have too tough a time to do it. He also had to remake drones desperately. He was down to 23. That's what the little run by did. So he rebuilds, it's like up to 20 now. I'm pretty sure with 2 new bases, he wants to go up to at least like 55. And he's had the supply to do it. I kind of want to, note this, is that most of the time when I've checked Bly's supply, it's kind of hard to say, it's been around 180. Like, he's had room to build more drones or more corruptors. And I gotta figure it's on purpose because he wants that option. But it's also like, I mean, what is going to signify to you to build whatever 20 supply you have left over, So I don't know. But it's very consistent, and it's not just when he's low on minerals too. Maybe someone else can back me up on this. A little bit of an attack off to the right side as Fantasy attacks off to the left side. So Bly knows there won't be any Cyclones helping this army, but he's also not doing a great job dealing with the Cyclones that are on his side of the map. Kind of forcing his way through here, but even with only 3 Liberators, they will be adding a ton of damage. They have so much room to have to go through before you even meet the Liberators. And by pushing forward just a little bit, it looks like Bly does successfully fend off the base from mining, but it doesn't really matter. Like, Fantasy's not that concerned about this base. This is almost a trap. This is like the more, it's, what's that story of a mouse caught in butter? I guess that story is actually that one mouse died, the other one turned its way out. And oh, it's stuck in milk. That's what it is. If anyone watched Catch Me If You Can. One mouse drowns in the butter as it tries desperately to throw around. Another one churns it. Damn it, milk. Churns it into butter and is able to escape. I don't know which one Bly is going to be. It kind of feels like he's going to continue just running around the milk and die slowly. But maybe I'll turn it into butter. Although I wouldn't want to swim in butter either. I'm not sure how that exactly would work. I think the mice just dies. Anyways, this is like really awkward. It's such a harsh choke point. So even though Bly's probably not moving his army up there, or he's only trying to move a couple of his armies up there, everything is being pushed forward. And that is turning into more awkward losses than he can really afford. He did temporarily dip down 150 supply. He is back up, but he has lost. I mean, this hatchery wasn't that important, but this hatchery was still kind of important. And his Cyclones have also just taken out good groups of Hydras, very expensive units at this point. And they're still doing it too. Like, all the reinforcements are going down here. Finally, he's going to clean that up, and he forces this base to now just be completely abandoned. And because he did this so quickly, quote unquote, right? There are a lot of minerals and gas to take advantage of. So this should become Bly's base, but at the same time, Fantasy is taking what is usually the Zerg side, right? So I'm still not confident about Bly. As I say that, Fantasy did lose a lot of his own supply. It looks like those Vikings did not stand up to Bly's parasitic bombs and corruptors and whatnot. And he is having to replace that. And Fantasy was not quite up to his own humongous bank. But I think he has more potential to get there because he has extra orbitals and he just needs to slap down a couple mules. I guess his gases weren't that impressive either. I really thought that Fantasy would have more of a bank after so long, but he's been trading the Cyclones and Hellbats. I thought he was trading them favorably, but I guess I was wrong. In fact, Fantasy's not the one that's trading favorably. I mean, it's very close, but still. The loss of the Vikings and that right side base was more costly than anticipated, probably even for Fantasy, who is now needing to buy time again to build up whatever count he has to. In this case, he's going back in a bio. This is a really cool thing that, of course, Fantasy would try to do. He does not have stim or combat shields, though, so I feel like he's missing the most important things. But he might not be trying to go back into actual bio. I might be wrong about that. He might just be trying to upgrade his ghosts purely and entirely. It's weird. It's really weird to get upgrades just for ghosts because most of their usefulness is in their snipes or their nukes. Maybe you could argue they're kind of useful against banelings because they're not light units, but adding armor onto that doesn't seem to be worth it, in my opinion. I don't know. Fantasy, you do you, man. But feels a little weird. I would have loved to see, to be honest, I was going to say I wouldn't mind, but let's be real, I would have loved to have seen an attempt to go back in a bio, which is something that Fantasy has always kind of been on the breakthrough point of doing. He was the one that did it originally in Pro League. He's the one that kind of brought it back in some of the tournaments that he played. And he's the one that still, attempts to do every now and again. It is a very valid strategy to go from bio to mech. And even sometimes vice versa in Brood War, for instance. But it just doesn't really seem to be the case in StarCraft 2. But no, it seems to be just for the ghosts. But I really should, talk more about this. Ghost play. That is fun stuff. That is really fun stuff. He doesn't have a lot of ghost academies, though. And as someone who finds yourself in many late game scenarios, I do like to have like 3 or 4 ghost academies and nuke in more than one place, right? Or to have just more than one nuke. If you find an army that's sieging you up here and you nuke once, then they move away, you have to wait an entire another nuke build to continue pressuring. That doesn't sound like it's that useful. So I would like to see more ghost academies, but I guess it's not on the things to do list of Fantasy. Things to do is lose all your SCVs and your planetary. Nicely done by Bly to take out at least one of these bases off to the left side. Sure, he let 2 other bases get up and running without too much trouble, but he is apparently trading well enough to do it. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, guys. Jesus. What are the upgrades anyways? Are they fleshed out? Not really. I can't believe these 2 upgrades. +3 ship weapons isn't done, which seems like something Fantasy would want to get. I think he might have just forgotten about it and now he doesn't have a bank to get it. Although on the same hand, like Bly is not nearly well upgraded on the air. He only has 1 carapace and 2 flyer attack, and is not even fully upgraded on his carapace for the ground units. But I guess Cyclone Lock-on doesn't matter about that. Whew. Woo-wee. Fantasy still struggling to get back to max. Bly just about there. Once again, hovering around 180, 190. Ghosts are coming through, and while he only has 1 nuke, he has plenty of snipes, and I do not see an Overseer. Oh, but there's Spore Crawlers. Oh, no. Wait, is that worth it? Was that worth it? There's like 1 fungal now. 2 fungal, sorry. No, I think he really wanted some snipes. I'm guessing he didn't see the Spore Crawler. It'd suck if that was the reason he loses this game, but I think that's what happens. He was so bold with the ghosts. And I don't think taking the infestors out of the equation was the only goal of the ghosts, because it wasn't the way to win. Like you can see here that he still absolutely lost that fight, but if he had snipes and he sniped on the entirety of the Broodlord army, then it would be maybe perhaps a lot more worth of a trade. The Fantasy has lost his left base, has not been able to deny this right base from Bly. Well, he has 2 mining bases. They are now at this point the only mining bases he has. And he lost very expensive units. Once again, he's lost all of his Cyclones, or a lot of them, in just these trades off to the left side. He's lost very expensive ghosts, like 8 or 9 of them at least, right? And he lost some Vikings as well. So it looks like Bly has successfully weathered the storm. If you watch the first 12 minutes of this game and the last 5 minutes of the game, you'd say everything looks hunky-dory. But there was a period where Fantasy was dominating the map and out-expanding Bly. But not trading nearly as well. Hot damn. This is game number 1, by the way. Not just going to be a long series, potentially. It's also going to be a long qualifier for these guys. I'm guessing... I think this is around a 16 or around a 32, rather. Around a 32 match. I'm guessing everyone else is on their way to the round of 16. He still never went in a bio. So those were just for ghosts. If you wanted to really go into bio, you would have gotten more than 3 barracks, I think. And they're only with Tech Lab, so it was just an entirely ghost-related move. Oh, these fungals. They don't do a ton of damage, and they're only hitting 3 Vikings at a time, but it is absolutely worth it. It is energy versus real mineral gas units. Now, Nuke does manage to go forward here, but it doesn't really take out very much. And again, there's only 1 Ghost Academy, so it's not like he can continue pressuring with that. It did find the army all the way to the right side, so it's an easy-peasy pickup on the left base. Bly does not have a lot of ground army left over. Most of his reinforcing units, when he traded out, were changed into infestors. I guess he has 21 roaches, but where are they? He stopped with the whole Hydra thing. He used, like, pure Hydra for a while. Alright, so he does have a ground force again, and he's even making 16 lings, so never mind. Like, that quickly changed. But are roaches the right call? There's a raven here. That's not gonna work. I don't know. This game's... I guess the game's not really over yet, but I was paying attention over there. Fantasy did get this side of the map kind of broken. It's just production, I guess, and I think he saved his Vikings. He did. So now we're pairing them. Fantasy could try to go for the tech structures in the main, but then he'd open himself up to losing his entire army. There's no recall, there's no dropships. As soon as the Broodlords came over, or even just the rest of the infestors, he would have died, and that's not a worthwhile trade for what... I mean, it's going to be a tag that takes a long time to replace, but Bly would still have his maxed out army, so it's like, is it really worth it? More ghosts appear. They do get the EMPs, and this time a lot of them survive as the ground army just gets whittled away. Bly loses a huge chunk of supply because his Broodlords are still really the best part of his army, right? Fungals looked good when they were just shooting off their fungals when they were nice and safe, but now they're not looking nearly as good, especially because they got EMP. They cannot stop the onslaught of the Cyclones, and while earlier Fantasy lost expensive ghosts, expensive Cyclones, expensive Vikings, Bly is losing very expensive infestors, as well as the entirety almost of his roach army. Actually, it was the entirety of his roach army is now swapping back into the Hydras. I guess he went for roaches, not necessarily to deal with the Cyclones, but because they had tunneling claws, and he was thinking about more harassment and more surprise pop-ups from underground. Just didn't work out that way. And it was a expensive gamble. Roaches aren't generally expensive, but when you make like 25 of them and you're not having a ton of mineral mining, then they are expensive. This is too back and forth. Oh, God. Lordy. I would still love for Fantasy to get more Ghost Academies. I mean, he's almost maxed out, and that has been the big reason why he hasn't gotten anything more besides replacing his armies, because it's the only thing he can afford. But if he did get max, and he's about there now, and he starts to bank a little, I don't want to see +3 attack. I really don't want to see +3 attack. I would love to see another Ghost Academy or two. Good trade for the Hydras off to the right side. They're also going to find an orbital, and while there's still a bunch of command centers left over, 5 orbitals, 3 planetaries. Oh, he finds the only barracks. Oopsie doopsie. I literally pointed this out. He also finds the only Ghost Academy, so you do have to rebuild a barracks to put a Ghost Academy. I don't have to say that statement too often, so I'm like second guessing myself, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that is it for the ghosts, I guess. But he still has 6. Oh my God, he has 16 ghosts. When did he get that many? I've only seen like 8. Oh, there comes the rest. Oh, geez. Oh, lordy. Well, I still think he should rebuild 1 barracks. But now he has EMPs. Now he has snipes. The question is, last time we saw him EMP down the infestors, he still lost all of his ghosts, and it was with the Broodlords included. So when the true army clash comes together, both of their full might of their armies come together, and there's no severe miss micro, what is it going to look like? Overseers are going to be made for every engagement now. That was a lot of ghosts. That was a questionable trade. But a couple of those do live, and they EMP the infestors. They get a little too close. But he just traded out a lot of dead ghosts for what is only energy, and Bly is doing the smart thing by pulling back. Gonna have to be a little hypercritical here as we're into the... We are getting to, like, mined out map situations, but to be super critical just for a second, like, super critical, he should not be moving forward with all of his ghosts. I think most of us can agree with that. Like, he only needs max I think you would bring 7 ghosts, like half your ghosts forward to try and do that suicide move. And he is, I think he knows he's suiciding some ghosts to do it. I just don't think you have to suicide all the ghosts, right? And considering he's not just down in minerals and gas, potentially very soon, he's also literally without barracks and ghost academies. He's not going to be able to continue doing that type of move. And Bly's already basically recovered off of that move. That's a lot of infestors. It is now 4 ghosts to 17 infestors, so even with the infestors all bulked up, I don't think the EMPs will blanket all of them. He also has to worry about still, you know, sniping down the Broodlords potentially. Maybe EMPing the Vipers could have also been a thing if he had more ghosts. Now it's not. They're both almost maxed out, but I'm feeling stronger for Bly's spell-based composition than I am for fantasy. Oh, good lord. Losing out on some of that ground army. Just not enough there to combat as many Hydras. Bly now turning a lot of his drones into, into buildings, into spore crawlers, and maybe even some spine crawlers. But mostly spore crawlers. Because he has started to bank a lot. That was a long period of time where they weren't trading a bunch. And Bly is back up to 3,000 minerals, 1,700 gas, so he can comfortably add on sack defense, which will give him a bit of an edge when it comes to the defensive engagements. Which I think in fantasy still believes he's the one that has to be aggressive, and he's not exactly wrong with that. He has the mobile composition. And he is the one that is running out of minerals and gas. Probably a little hard to tell. You know, if you're the player and you're wondering what your opponent has, you can't know that Bly has this much of a bank. And you're probably hoping that he doesn't. But we know that there's about a 10,000 resources lost difference between the two. And while fantasy is sucking this base dry, it is one of the last bases he possibly can. This one's almost mined out. This one's just got some gas. And what else do we have here? We have these minerals and this gas. If you could ever clear up that creep spread, sure. It's a nice find, you know. Anything to take away their advantages when the final push comes. So all the spore crawlers, a lot of them die. Most of them have to move over. And a couple of banelings, which seems a little odd, but you know, they're the last thing probably that are going to be attacked, even with the Hellbat splash, Helene splash. So they could roll in there and get to the heart of the army and do some serious damage. Liberators are going to provide a nice buffer once again. We saw the situation like 15 minutes ago, but over to the right side, so we've just flipped. We've now hit the 1 hour timer of Heart of the Swarm and Wings of Liberty. For anyone who's wondering why there is suddenly an hour clock that just appeared. Something they've never fixed, and I guess I hope they never fix, because then I can talk about it and buy time for what is a very, very long game. But back in the Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm, the timer was not accurate. It did not compare to real life time, because back in Brood War, it was supposed to be on normal. They put it on faster. That's how the game was played when Blizzard didn't expect it to be. So everything was like 1.2 times faster, something like that. And then they finally got around to fixing it. Just a bit of a quality of life improvement. But speaking of quality of life, these Hellions and Cyclones don't have it. Most of them die. I guess not too bad of a trade, because Fantasy still has the minerals and gas to replace them. He's still keeping his head above water. Bly could also replace it. In fact, he's not even going to replace the Hydras. He says, fine, take it. I wanted better units anyways. He's currently rebuilding another Greater Spire. Did it die? I didn't notice. Oh my god, it did. It must have... Oh, you know what? It was right here. God. Yeah, when the Cyclones almost entered the main base, I guess I missed that the Greater Spire died. You guys probably caught it. My bad. And I'm guessing Bly also missed it, because it took him a long time to rebuild it. Someone in chat also says what time it is in Korea. I think it is a very important thing to note. It's currently 2:30 a.m. in Korea, and there's still the rest of the qualifier to be played, so hopefully Fantasy has some serious endurance. 20 SCVs go down. They're both on very low worker counts, but they're both only on one base mining, so I guess 26-ish workers is actually full saturation. So that's where they should be? Question mark? I don't know. Bly has replaced all of the units that died, and that has used up all of his bank. Actually faster than I anticipated, but I guess he made a bunch of expensive units. Cyclones now overpowering the ground army very easily. Even though they're injured, they are well upgraded. They got a Raven on their side as well to help out. Obviously, just to clear up the crew tumors. More like it. Well, I finally got into that +3 Carapace, but I mean, it's probably worth canceling. Oh no! Oh no! 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 Oh no! Oh no! Okay, that might be what ends the game. Bly, cancel that +3 carapace and put it all back into infestors. You just lost like 6 or 7 of them. And while that is only a portion of his infestor army, I can guarantee he didn't mean to sacrifice them for the greater good. Snipes are gonna go down at any offensive unit, so you gotta just go in and try and swoop in for the abducts. I'm thinking is the only option. There aren't that many ghosts left. He never rebuilt the barracks, he never rebuilt the ghost academy, but they do have a lot of energy for being alive for so long. The Greater Spire was remade in what looked to be a very safe location, but is now no longer looking like a safe location. Bly is losing the last of his drones. How was I ever supposed to call this game? Jesus. Spore Calls advance forward, and I guess that's one thing that Ghost can't snipe, so clever. I would not have thought of that. Because I'm not a Zerg player finding myself in this situation very often, but it is absolutely the right call. There are no tanks, there are no cyclones. The Ghost, I guess, could have auto-attacked them, but instead, Fantasy just gives up the location, says I'm going to find a better location, hopefully with the rest of my army as well, because at this point, I mean, oh no, he does it again, he does it again, he does it again. Tries to get an EMP, only down to 2 ghosts left, but yeah, with that base down, which implies going to cannibalize, Fantasy is just going to have these planetaries buy time, I think. I'm thinking the only option here is that the rest of their army is together. Or, alternatively, they're buying time because this army's going to try and go for a base race, which I'm just now realizing is probably what Fantasy is thinking. So buy time, you know, put on the face, you know, pretend that you're going to actually take an engagement and then retreat. Do it again and again and again. You have some minerals and some gas to repair, so you could try and do it forever. Bly might be realizing what the plan is as the natural is now being attacked. All of his tech searches are finally going to go down. Even though the opportunity was there like 20 minutes ago, it is now an open option for our Terran player. Infested Terrans, by the way, do have some seriously sick anti-air, but they need to actually be in range. Hive is going to go down. Infestation Pit would also be a nice snipe. We have no replacement lair on the way. In fact, well, the hatchery's not even done, so it can't yet. If he doesn't get the spawning pool, then I guess he could immediately turn into a lair and immediately turn into an infestation pit. But he can't afford it, so JK. Lies down to 6 workers and 7 minerals. He has a ton of gas, but nothing to do with it. His drones are here, and he could slowly replace his tech structures. That is what he has to do now. No easy peasy replacement of your Spire units, your investors. Even Lings are now no longer an option. You have to replace the tech structure first. This is getting a little silly. Because, I mean, the thing is, I don't think anyone's in the wrong here. I mean, and I see some people talking about the fancy GG timing. The 3-minute delay, I can't tell exactly when that's being talked about, but anyways, like, Bly was also is a little notorious for his own fancy GG timing. But this is a situation where neither of them are really doing the stereotypical BM fantasy GG timing. Well, sorry, I should rephrase that. It's not that it's BM. Fantasy never does it out of BM. He does it because he thinks he really can bring it back. I mean to say that we usually use the phrase fantasy GG in a bad connotation. It's not that. They are both equally still viable to win this game if the micro goes poorly for either one. If the micro goes perfectly, who do I think wins this? I have no idea. Cyclones, this late into the game, this type of game, still a bit of a mystery. But there's so many spellcasters for Bly that I would say the Zerg army does win. Again, if all the micro goes according to plan. In fact, I'm gonna say that. That's where I'm putting my bet. My bet of nothing. Is that Bly wins this, assuming that he doesn't, you know, move all of his infestors into the army again. Good lord. I don't, like, Fantasy's in this position, right? Where it is not the correct call to move into Bly. So, theoretically, wait a minute. Every unit counts. Fantasy can only replace so many. They did take this base back. They've swapped this base multiple times. Good lord. Okay, well. thought something more might be happening. Fantasy could try and like look over here and then attack over here type deal with if he realizes Bly is looking for those snags. He has slowly rebuilt that spawning pool and the lair, by the way, guys. This, and he's got minerals and gas to actually use it, too. So I believe the goal is an infestation pit. Maybe he goes for a spire? I'm honestly not sure. Guys, I don't know. I'm as confused as you all are. Like, who's gonna win this? I'm still on the Bly train that the spellcasters are gonna be too good. But this could be like an inherent Terran bias or something like that. Which I really am trying to think that it's not. I've cast more games than I play. I'm feeling like I'm taking this out of experience of watching spellcasters win late games, but, you know, it could be. The 30 armor supply difference is probably what other people are looking at and saying, like, no, Terran obviously wins, right? That's a substantial amount, but I'm like, spells are good, guys. The trick is, though, I guess, yeah, right, is that you can't just cast a spell and run away in this situation. If you run away, Bly is dead unless he starts bringing his drones with him and builds hatcheries across the map, which he now has minerals to do. So, I don't know if that was really timeout worthy, but I guess I get the intent. Not that anyone has any idea what I'm talking about. 3-minute delay. Oh, it was Infestors. I think that is the best call. So I want to mention real quick that Bly did get a Neural Parasite, but I'm not sure that'll ever be a viable thing. Like, how many Infestors is he going to have? He's going to have 13 Infestors. He should have like 8 more, which is really disappointing for him. That is enough to Neural Parasite every single Cyclone, but is that even something that's viable? Would that really work? I feel like no. But I don't... I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. Because then what do you do first? You fungal or Neural Parasite first? I mean, I don't know. Nah, he's gonna focus on fungling. 100%. But I'm just throwing it out there because Bly can be an out-of-the-box thinker. Quick check on the detection issue. As I know there's burrow available. So Infestors can't burrow fungal if you are out of the loop. But they can burrow infested Terran. And there are no longer any ravens. There are not. Fantasy could make one, maybe? Uh-oh. Maybe he can't. Raven's 200 gas, isn't it? Just kidding. No, he can't. So he is entirely dependent on scans and missile turrets, of which he does build one, and I'm really glad he did that. I don't think Bly is thinking about the burrow shenanigans, but it is a possibility. Yeah, and you know, if the Infestors get behind your army and throw infested Terrans, suddenly your lock-ons are wasted on those, or they're not, and the Terrans get damage done on your Liberators. Like, that's all bad news, right? You know, I might also like to see queens. No, he has queens. I just can't see them. Okay, he has 3 queens. Okay. Maybe more queens? I'm really grasping here. Spells are starting to do what they do best, which is if there is a long, drawn-out engagement. If you can call this an engagement. Stalemate is the better word. Spells are going to be far better. And that's why Fantasy never going back into Ghosts was probably a big mistake. We have a medevac on the way, and I'm gonna guess that it's purely to drag the Ghosts on top of the Infestors to get the EMP. I don't think it's to heal up his Hellbats and his few Ghosts. But it could be. I could be wrong. .1-minute lair timing new meta. Right? Parasitic bombs are just gonna be so dangerous. Like, they're just too good, I think. So the Vikings can land to get out of them. And I think he has to land them to get out of them, literally. He's gonna lose too many Vikings. Like, I don't... Oh my god. There are still mineral patches. And there are gas geysers with gas. This one has 800. I can't... Really? I'm an observer. Really? Oh, really? I can't... Okay, I don't know how much that has. There we go. That has 134 as well. It is worth, if Bly is going to let him, and Bly can't not let him. It is worth for him to get the gases. Oh, Bly's gonna move over to the gases. He's gonna lose his hive for it, but... Or is he? No, I'm wrong. Okay, never mind. We're in that territory where they definitely should be long distance mining. By the way, he managed to scrap together some gas. And you should be long distance mining gas even, if you're allowed to. I mean, technically, Fantasy could lift one of these buildings and take it because the creep suit is gone. That's absolutely what he should do. But is he gonna think about that? I don't think he will. Oh, lordy. So I mean, he still might use the medevac to boost in if he sees an opportunity, but I guess it was to heal up his units, and I guess it does make sense. Like, she's technically a spellcaster. Anything energy-based, right? So your ghosts might survive. Well, yeah. So they're gonna survive that 5th fungal instead of dying immediately. That's a true point. Fantasy is currently using a broom to sweep up off the creep spread, and so he can take the bases that still have gas and minerals. I love it. He is moving his command center over. Like, you always have to keep in mind when you're watching pro games that because you think of it, it's not, you know, they won't think of it. There's too many things happening. They're much faster players than us as well, so there really is too many things happening. But in a game like this, you do start thinking that they also have time to think. I mean, there's not much going on sometimes, so... Fantasy is an out-of-the-box thinker. He does realize the opportunity, and he takes the opportunity. He will use that to boost his army supply. I'm not sure exactly what he'll go for. I don't know what the correct option is here, but he's going to go for something. But I was still on Bly's side when there was a 20 army supply difference, and now there's only 8. So I don't think I really care what he includes unless it's a ton of ghosts. And that's going to be both gas guys are taken. That's like 900 gas right there, I think, right? Yeah, almost 1,000. It is 1,000. That is a lot to put in some very... It is usually the, you know, the rarest commodity is gas. Yeah, that's going to be a lot made. But what is going to be made? I'm still kind of questioning that. If he wants to build ghosts, he has to rebuild a lot of shit. If he wants to build more ravens, I guess that could be an option. He's also opening himself up for repairs now that he has gas and minerals again. So, saying that the medevac was useful to repair everything. Oh, we are going to the literal hour mark of this game, guys. What is even happening in other brackets? What is happening outside in the real world? Is World War III happening? Did China take over the world yet? Did all the Americans move to Canada yet? I don't... Special versus Clem is happening in the qualifying match. DNS is waiting for the Hellraiser Akeem, but that's going to be happening before the series is done, because again, this is game number 1. You don't even get to decide who wins this series based off this game. Oh my god. Suit did advance on, now waiting for Ziggy or Phaser. Yumi versus Sign is round 16 match already happening. Rail's almost in the round 16. Bunny's in the round 16. Okay, that's topical, as Bunny is going to be the next opponent for whoever wins this series. Just a heads up. And I will probably follow that, because by the time this series is done, it will be the end of time, and Bunny will be the only person left. Soda vs. Neve is happening for the qualifying match as well. I'm going to guess Neve wins that, but we might see a surprise. Currently nothing on the production tab. Fantasy might be taking his time thinking about what he should build. I mean, he's banking a ton. He's got the options to rebuild, but he's just not choosing to do so quite yet. I gotta say Ghosts or Ravens, right? Because it always boils down to spellcasters are the right call. Even if maybe you think your spellcasters aren't as good as your opponents or as easy to execute as your opponents, they're almost always the right call. There are those rare scenarios where suddenly transferring into like 1 billion Marines does work out, but he's going to need more than just 2,000 minerals or whatever he's going to be able to scrounge up here to do that. He'd probably need more like 4,000 minerals and then, you know, 5 minutes of uninterrupted time. Which I guess time is not an issue here. Time is apparently going to go on forever and ever and ever. Does this have anything? Okay, I don't think it does. This has no gas, but it has 1 mineral pouch, guys. 1 lone mineral patch. 300 minerals just about there. Fantasy still has not chosen what to go into. I could start talking about the potential of a draw, but I don't think I should. Someone is going to force the issue. No one is going to want to replay Parasite after this. Okay, alrighty then. So on to the next base. Is there a next base to even take? I guess that'd be that one. He's still got a lot of scans because he's still on 4 orbitals. 2 planetaries now no longer really an issue. I guess if he needs to rebuild SCVs, which I don't think he needs to do. He has not used his minerals and gas. It feels wrong to take the engagement until he's used everything he's got. Parasitic Bomb is going to be used to take out any... Well, you know what? That's a lot of minerals and gas to save just for repairs, but is that why he's doing this? He's literally saving all of these resources just for repair? I guess he is. I mean, I would have figured maybe like 1 or 2 more Ravens or you know, something a little bit, but it seems to be all just for the repair. Is that the genius move? I don't know. Ah! Ah! We have Neuroparasite being used! The sound effects are awesome for Neuroparasite. A pretty silly way to try and be efficient about killing your enemy, but I guess it is efficient. Or is it? Go, Hellback, go. What happens if the match lasts until day 2? I don't know. So, Bly could try and play his own base race style. It's not as easy as Terran, obviously, but you can pick up your spore crawlers and... Oh, that was a nice grab. You can pick up your spore crawlers and move around the map, but considering you still have to have... You'd still take on 4 orbitals, 6, 7 factories. Like, that would take so long to try and kill in every single building. So he can't win via base race. Fantasy still can, technically. I guess. Very technically. If he kills all these structures and the only thing left are, in fact, spore crawlers, he could try and dive on them. But he would never know if that was the last spore crawler or not, so that'd be a really risky thing to do. But it does look like signs are pointing to Fantasy having to be the desperate one. Even though Bly's the one that's moved out here, he has kept a lot of his army back at home to make sure it is an easy peasy cleanup time. It's not a very efficient army, though. I was going to say, he's going to have to bring something else over and use neuroparasites. With this many infestors, you're not really looking for an opportunity to waste all their energy either. Again, that's going to have to be the EMPs. We do finally have something coming out for all the resources that Fantasy collected. So that's +3 ship weapons, which I noted like 30 minutes ago. He might regret not getting. Surprise BC switch coming up. He'd be able to afford like 3 BCs. They would be able to Yamato, but they'd also be abducted, so it'd be... I mean, it'd be a micro war, but battlecruisers might not have been the worst thing to do, but I'm thinking more like 30 minutes ago. Oh, is this it? Is this it? He's not microing away from the parasitic bomb. There you go. And he's also being fungled in range of the parasitic bomb, so boom, instantly, Fantasy's air army gets demolished. He still has an army, but it's a lot in this ground that probably can't take on the Broodlord army. We got, you know, Blinding Clouds you have to work through, as well as just Fungals to get close enough to the Broodlords. He does find the Infestors full energy, not responding in time. But having lost most of his Viking army, not only down to 6 Vikings, I think this is Bly's game, man. Like, it's not quite fantasy GG timing, but it's soon enough we'll get there. A couple of EMPs do go down. He does grab a couple of Cyclone lock-ons, but loses units for it. So not a perfect situation there. Fantasy not really about trading. Although, again, he has minerals and gas. He could trade some units. I mean, at this point, I would have gone for, like, YOLO nukes. And nukes really would not have been a terrible thing to have, by the way, because at least they could slowly encroach on the structures if diving for them wasn't a possibility. It's all very hypothetical, and it doesn't work out perfectly like that, of course, but it's like, you know, if he had 6 nukes, 600 gas, then maybe. Maybe. What else do you do? What else do you do? I thought he was going to add on ghosts. I think snipes would be a good option, because he can't... Snipes have that decent range that, like, if he's not paying attention, which, you know, Bly's not been paying attention a few times, you can hopefully snipe and get out without being fungled, or only being fungled once, in which case you have the medevac to heal it. Ravens aren't really a great option anymore, I guess. I brought that up because they are spellcasters, but, you know, because their splash damage isn't really, you know, it doesn't contribute, it's not a great option, so I would have gone with ghosts. And fantasy could still go for ghosts. Like, he has the money to barely afford a decent amount. So he's limited by gas. That's what? Gas are... Ghosts are 200, 100 still, or was that changed? They used to be a lot more gas, and that was changed a long time ago. I mean, 5 extra ghosts. Would that actually make a difference? I don't know if anything would make a difference. It's such a difficult position to break. And, you know, best case scenario for the last hour, you were the one trading more efficiently, which was not the case. So you have more units to try these out with, but he's quite desperate. Oh, God. Time to use the co-caster chat. Nate says, this game is over when Terran built Vikings for AA. I sort of agree. Thors have been doing fairly well against Broodlords with their update. And we brought up battle cruisers a couple minutes ago, but that would have been something only viable if he had started back when he had the economy to do so. I mean, if you guys are coming in towards the end of this game, it looks like it will be the end of the game. I think Bly has enough units to now kill Fantasy straight out. If you're only coming in the last 2 minutes of the game, and by last 2 minutes I mean the last 20 minutes, you have missed what is a very back and forth game. At no point were they ever banking like 7,000, 6,000. There were a few points where they were banking 3,000, 2,000. But not that many, and less so for Fantasy, I believe. And they were trading often enough to never be like, well, now that I'm not going to be attacked, I can do a tech swap. You know, like there was never, I feel, a truly comfortable moment until it was too late. You know, the options that were more immediate to you certainly looked more reasonable, more promising than the, you know, what if this game goes to an hour and 9 minutes possibilities. But if any of you actually go back and watch the first 50 minutes, whatever, then, like, I mean, more power to you, but lordy. But lordy. I'm pretty sure with that last fungal combination, Fantasy really is dead. He's been forced to use his bank to replace the units, and maybe that was his ultimate goal. I'm not sure that's the real use of it, though. It's what he's chosen to do. It's what he's now desperate to do. But it's not a good enough army to take on Bly's. He's now down in army supply, and I gave Bly the win, even with 20, even with 40 army supply lead. If Fantasy would ever have that, I still would have given Bly the win. Now, Bly has entirely given up on the option of playing a base race game. Excuse me. He does not have any drones to build. He has 7 drones, actually. 5 drones I can count. Okay, so he has drones. He doesn't have any minerals. I guess that's the ultimate point. He doesn't have any minerals to build Spore crawlers, he can build 1 extractor, can't build any hatcheries. If Fantasy were to find Bly so out of position, he could try and kill all these buildings and then take a very big gamble and sack all of his units on top of the spore crawlers. But remember, like, his liberators can't help against the spore crawlers, and those would do the best job of taking them out, I guess. Actually, cyclones wouldn't be bad either, assuming that they live long enough to try and take them out. How many spore crawlers do we have? So there are 11 buildings. No, there's an extractor. 12 buildings that Fantasy would have to kill, and he would never know if it was truly the last building. He could guess. He's cleaned up a lot of the creep spread, so he knows that there's not, like, a spore crawler over here, right? And he's kind of looked at every single base. He figured there are no extractors there, but there could be. It would be the gamble, but I think right now it's the best gamble to make. It all relies on Bly giving up these structures to begin with. I guess if he gives up these structures and he doesn't bring his spore crawlers with him, he could also lose these. But that's the only option for Fantasy, right, guys? Right? Right? I think it's the only option. Like, what else are you hoping for? Even massive EMPs shouldn't cover every single spellcaster. It's all, like, Infestors, Queens, Vipers, and he's even saved Vipers back here that I'm almost positive that's not a mistake. I'm thinking he's just making sure they don't get EMP'd, but the random Corruptor being there is a little weird. I don't know. Could be a mistake. But the point is he has more spellcasters than I think EMPs can cover. One of the last planetaries will now help a little, I guess. Maybe an Infestor accidentally runs forward and it blasted it away. Bly has now really left his base open for the killing, and Fantasy's going to go for it. He's going to clear up a spore crawler, so that's 1 less structure to deal with. He's going to go for all these buildings, and with a couple of cyclones, they do go down rather fast, but he is missing so many more cyclones than he used to have, guys. If he had 12 cyclones like he's had in previous run-bys, I mean, all these bases are dead really quickly. But instead, he's forced to kind of take an engagements. Here come all the spells. He does break away from that 1 parasitic bomb. He's mostly taking care of the Infestors. Bly is trying to move in here. He should recognize the Vipers over there. There he goes. More parasitic bombs come down. That's going to be a lot of damage on top of the Vikings. This is going to be the last stand, no matter how it goes. But remember, it's not just these buildings that Fantasy has to take down. There are still spore crawlers around the creep tumors that Fantasy can't quite see. He doesn't have full knowledge yet, but he soon will, I guess, as the hatchery has finally gone down. And so I was kind of forgetting about that. Is that once the hatchery goes down, he will know exactly how many buildings are left. It's been 1 hour and 13 minutes. That's my excuse. So now he knows. Oh, God. It's a very basic thing of StarCraft. I just derped really hard. So he knows exactly how many spore crawlers. I guess counting them as time goes on. Oh, God. He now knows it was the last hatchery, if he didn't, like, pretty much know anyways. That reveals every single structure, and that is 6 spore crawlers left. Good lord. I can't believe he did it, though. I guess I never really thought too much about it, because I figured he would never be able to really kill this, but Bly moved forward enough that he was able to kill every single structure in the quote-unquote main base. He survived with an okay amount of units left over, too, but a couple of fungals will quickly change that. 1 more bites the dust. Repair will start to run out as the gas runs out. But yeah, he knows. I mean, he's making sure, I'm certain he's running around the map with his cursor right now, making sure that's the only structures that are left, but it is indeed. Wrong way. 1, 2, 3, 4. I thought there was 6. I can't even see the 6 ones are. Oh my god, they're so random. There's one over here, and there's one kind of far forward. So Fantasy's got to count. He's got to be very sure of what he counts. Now his next goal is to go and reach those structures, which, again, Liberators cannot help with. You got 4 units that are no longer helpful. Well, for this specific scenario of winning. Three spore crawlers are being transported with Bly's army, so let's think here. If if you sack all of the ground units, all the units that can attack grounds on the spore crawlers, let's consider that he lands the Vikings here. Nah, it doesn't kill that fast enough. Because he's going to be fungal before he even reaches it, so that's going to slow him down. He's going to lose a Cyclone here. Very important Cyclone, to be honest. Oh my god, he's going to go for one of the spore crawlers. I can't believe this is still not a fantasy GG technically. Like I don't know when he recognized the whole potential base rate situation, how long he's been planning to do this. Maybe it was faster than I did, maybe it was slower than I did, I don't know, but he's recognized that he's going for it, and it is still a viable option. He grabs a medevac that I assume was just not in the control group. We are down to only 4 spore crawlers. He brought a 4th one forward once he recognized. Making sure to burrow them too. He doesn't have to burrow them to be counted as structures or anything, but just in case, I guess. He only has 2 corruptors, so the Liberators could do some serious damage to his infestor count. The Vikings could also win against 2 corruptors if it was only 2 corruptors, I think. Right, with the range, but... I think it's okay for Koreans to participate in the US European qualifiers. Absolutely, because that's what the rules are. Another Liberator's gonna pop, 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 pop. Where's that one ghost? What are you doing over here? What are you waiting for? He's not waiting for anything. He's just not dying, I guess. Oh, he's bringing it back over now. He could get a snipe on an infestor. Or the infestor could fungal. Or the infestor could fungal. Oh, he misses the fungal! Oh, but he gets like a better fungal because of it. He was looking for the Liberators almost for sure, but he gets all the Hellion instead. Which I wouldn't say is the better fungal, but it's just, you know. It's really like the bulk of Fantasy's army here. He needs to kill every Q tumor so the spores bleed out. Nope, so Queen's spreading Q tumors. If he knew, like, this is the thing, right? Like, he knows where the structures are when they're moving around. He doesn't quite know where the army is. So, like, if he knew that the army was 5 feet in front of the spore crawlers and he could maybe grab the edge of a spore crawler being burrowed, well, then maybe he does try that. But he doesn't know where the army is, as much as he knows where the spore crawlers are. I haven't seen this long of a game in so long, StarCraft 2, guys. Jeez. I mean, of course it would be on Parasite. My throat is actually starting to hurt a little. Am I missing any options now here, guys? Am I missing a super obvious one? There is a way to counter CAPS units. I mean, something like EMP, maybe? I don't know, I mean... balance on all you want, guys. That seems like a silly one. Try playing Zero without any way to combat storm or feedback. Yeah, so I'm pointing out, again, Bly does have enough minerals to build an extractor, so if all the spore crawlers died, and he quickly hit his, you know, idle drone hotkey, he could try and make an extractor. Wait, could he? Oh, yeah, he could. Never mind. Wait, can you? I thought these actually got grayed out once they were gone. Yeah, I thought you can't build on empty extractors, but I also thought there was a graphical difference when they got grayed out on the actual geyser, not just the refinery or extractor. Either way, yeah, you can't build on empty Vespian geysers, which I think every Vespian geyser is now empty. Because Fantasy was roaming around making sure that was the case. Vikings lose 1v1 versus Corruptor. Ah, and there's Transfuse. Yeah, that's definitely right. Add in the confusion. They're gonna waste shots on the factories. Okay, anything in production is gonna be those creep tumors, so I can safely keep it on the units tab. So this should never be a draw situation. Oh, very good choice there. Good choice. Yeah, that's gonna be it. So Blue Flame Hellions take care of Infested Terrans fairly quickly, but even if they were right on top of it as soon as the Infested Terrans were spit out, there was just so many Infested Terrans. The game is over. There's no chance. Not that the Liberators are really making it that much more of a chance, but like I think we can literally say Fantasy cannot win this game. It is over. Hellions will not kill buildings fast enough. Fantasy could try and make this the longest game possible, but there's no way that Bly is going to concede to a draw. There's so many Overseers, too. It's not like that Ghost is going to do anything. Oh! And goodbye, Ghost. An hour and 23 minutes in, and we finally have the first game over. Come on, Fantasy. Now you're getting a little Fantasy GG. Oh, my God. That's it. 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 There's still corruptors that could go around and chase the buildings down. I guess that's not what he's hoping for, but simple, yeah, simulation successful. There you go. Fantasy, tap out. Fantasy. It's only game number 1. Oh, I almost want to cry out of relief. Okay. There's tears in my eyes. Oh my God. Oh, okay. So game number 2 is gonna happen, y'all. Game number 2. And now at this point, like I don't wanna give up on this because I mean we've already put so much time into it, y'all. I don't know if they're holding any qualifier matches. I don't think so, because there's other casters casting them. Tomorrow, qualifying matches will be held for the main caster, which is Wardy. Oh my God. I'm going to be right back. Fantasy is currently entering the lobby, so got some time. Why can't Bly just move his spores? He could have. But he's probably just checking off the list. That, you know, maybe something could happen if he wouldn't burrow his spores. Maybe the infestors out of Liberate or something like that. And the in-game chat, Fantasy literally says, what unit do I need? And Bly says, can't win. Late game versus Zerg. Infestor is really imbalanced. Oof. Definitely need to stand out of that one. At least it wasn't 4 hours and no pancakes were made. That's true. Oh my god. Fantasy's response just like, oh, okay. Whew. Let's get that scoreboard up. In the bottom left, as the orange Zerg, it is Bly. In the top right, as the blue Terran, it is Fantasy. Oh boy. How did the last game even start, y'all? That, oh, it just really hit me how tired I am. I think it started with a pool first. That Fantasy CC first against. It's all coming back to me now, guys. And the first 15, 20 minutes of that game were quite important and eventful. Bly had serious control over the game for what is usually a long time, but not when you have a overall hour and 20-minute game. And Fantasy brought it back, then Bly brought it back, and so on and so forth, until we ended up with Bly having the stronger spellcasting composition. I'm gonna assume
game paused.
That this game will not look anything like the last one. Parasite is our biggest map, I believe, and does lend itself to longer games, not just because of its size, which really isn't that big, you know, compared to some other macro maps we've had, but because the bases are rather easy to take. The first 5 bases. The third has the choke, so that's easy enough. The fourth is kind of like, well, I have enough units to defend it anyways, if I'm playing defensive. And then the fifth is right next to the fourth, right? So, kind of hides how dedicated he is to this by hiding the 2 lings there. It's clever. Fantasy will probably take care of these 2 lings and then not the other 2. Same with the last game. Anyways, Blue Shift is not a map like that. Their third base is rather far away from your fourth base, and even if you take it over here, suddenly you have the other half of the map that is just really unprotected. It's just not one that sets up so easily into 4 bases. Yeah. So, and we also might not see Fantasy go for mech again. He might like the Cyclone thing. It's a nice, like, you almost get to play like a bio player, but with mech, which Fantasy might, you know, find some appeal to. As long as he's been out of Brood War, he always seems to have kind of had the soft spot for how Brood War has worked. You know, the bio to mech transitions that he sometimes tries to do, as well as the way that he plays. Okay, Lings just got on up there. There was a lot of Lings, but the Reaper thought they had dealt with enough, I guess, and doesn't even catch the drone, so it feels bad, man. Could have at least gotten that. Oh my god. I'm thinking I'm only going to cast this best of 3, and then whoever wins faces Bunny, so... that'll be the last ones I do. Oh, God. Hellions are on the way. Looks like that is going to be swapped off for the starport. It's right next to each other. Bly takes the third base. That is... What isn't the normal base for third, is it? Berserk players? I want to say it's more like this one, but I'm having a hard time envisioning it not on the other side of the map. Like, usually it feels like Zerg's on the right side, Terran's on the left. This might make Fantasy choose a different base than he would usually. I think the base structure of the Terran does, in a map like this, sometimes reflect the base structure of the Zerg. You know, there's the opportunity to kill the third base before the creep spread is up, but usually that's not there. It's more about getting the fourth base before the creep spread is too far out. And if you have your third kind of facing that direction, then you're both attacking and defending from the, the fastest point possible. That's usually where we see it. And Fantasy is going for a third base, and he is going for bio. Something that Bly does not quite realize. Oh, no, just kidding. Wow. Ooh, beautiful. Pretty. He did get in there and scout that it was Stim started. So all knowledge to Bly. He'll be working on his creep spread, starting his upgrades. Second evolution Reaper a little bit late. Just a little bit. Might be on purpose. Fourth base can come down at a very reasonable time since he has, again, the full knowledge of what Fantasy is doing. Fantasy is going into tanks, so that's something to note. And we have a lot of people going into Widow Mines, finding them to be quite useful. Where did 3 drones go down? Oh, hello. Hello! You just blended in right there to the black background, didn't you? Liberator gets 3 drone kills and does get out of there to come back later. Might get a couple more. At least it's something. Fantasy Talons are also still looking around for any open opportunities, but they're probably not going to find any. And since he saw the exact setup of the base, of which, I guess, by the way, Fantasy did not swap off that tech lab, he knows he doesn't worry about Banshees. So yeah, tanks instead of Widow Mines? Nope, just the one tank. Okay, so that's what I was going to get into next, that it could just be a defensive tank. He isn't quite sure what Bly can do, and Bly can have, your Roach pushes, or however your 3-base Baneling all-ins, although he's far too droned for that. But the point is, that is a safety tank that will help you not just against any all-ins while you're still on 2 bases, but against any run-bys, or maybe if there's like a 1-run Roach attack, it would certainly be helpful. It disrupts your build the tiniest little bit, but then you go back into the factory on the reactor, starting your Widow Mines. Second factory will be a little bit faster. Because it is Widow Mine style as well. Things are looking a-okay macro. First 2 medevacs are on their way out. They could be paired to the Hellbats, or they could just try and divvy themselves up to get more damage done. Nice little easy roast toasty there. Mazanaga. Get out of here. Does a 3v3 master remain the same as 1v1? God, no. Anyways. Looks like he's going to be bringing the tank along with him, which is not usually what you see happen. Usually if it's 1 or 2 tanks and they swap over to Widow Mines, they do just leave them back at home. Maybe if it's 2 tanks, they do like a 2-tank push. But like, it's rare to see this one single tank be brought along with it. But it is going to provide a bit of an anchor that doesn't exist when it's just pure Marine Widow Mine. Not a lot of creep tumors to clean up, so easy peasy there. Bly was not prepared for this. Not yet, anyways. He has Banelings, but he doesn't have a lot of links to support them. Oh my god, they get amazing shots. Fantasy was paying attention to the run-by, of which he did stop from getting into his main base, or his natural base, but that was not worth losing the Marines. And I don't think that was a problem with the server, by the way. I think that was just the very moment that he split his attention was the moment that Bly ran in there. Bly probably planned out as well. Very nicely done. More run-bys looking to bother Fantasy. Not really going to work out this time. At the end of the day, Fantasy did take out all our creeps to the left side, and I don't see Bly replacing that. There we go. And sometimes that can be the goal. Like, if Fantasy had kept all his units alive, but he was unable to move any further, and he just backed away, I'd be like, yeah, okay. That makes sense. But since his army died, and he had to be pulled the entire way back, that is going to just mean there's a lot more creeps to worry about. And Bly, has been really pushing the mid creep spread. So while this doesn't usually become an attack path, it is going to be kind of embarrassing to have creep spread literally on your natural. You're going to want to take care of that eventually. 2-2 is on the way. Bly has a lot faster to Carapace. That's what we started off with. We have Burrow. I hope for burrowed Baneling Bombs. That'd be pretty cool. And a Spire is just about finished up. So Banelings do get some connections. This Liberator is currently canceling some eggs, killing some drones, getting something done here. Even gets a Queen. Shouldn't get two. Yeah, there goes the Transfuse. Fantasy's fourth base about halfway done. The Mutas are almost on the way out. Does Fantasy know about that? Hold on here. Gotta pick up this stuff. What am I? Oh my god, that was great! Oh, that was probably on purpose. That was probably microed. Oh, that was a great shot. Oh my god. I think it's like, oh, these 18 bands is probably it. Ooh, that was good. Okay, where's the Spire? In the main. Fantasy does clean up the middle. He did not see the Spire. He does not have missile turrets. It is a later Spire. Context to some other, like, you know, it's kind of like, do you go right to a Spire before your upgrades, or do you wait a little while? And obviously Bly has waited quite a while. So he scans and sees the Mutas, and now I can build missile turrets. But my point was going to be that as long as he's not, like, his entire army isn't on the opposite side of the map, he should be able to defend against the Mutas without too much SCV damage. But now he'll have the missile turrets do it for him. He'll also be able to place around Widow Mines should he find that tempting. It can be a hard decision. Like, you're building a lot of Widow Mines off of 2 factories usually, but you also usually need a lot of Widow Mines on the front line. So to have 4 back at home where you're trying to push is a decision. It's, you know, could potentially backfire. This is a very strong push. He just races through the creep spread, which can be dangerous if Bly did have Banelings already prepared, but he did not. They crash into a decent number of the Widow Mines and some Marines, but he loses the base for it and doesn't grab this base. Banelings roll into the Marines, but the Marines are too plentiful in number and just demolish the Muta count. I think they just halved it, or well, maybe not. There's actually 15, but where's the other ones? What? Okay, they're at the third base or something. He took out a few Mutas there. They were on the front lines. There we go. So that overall went much better for Fantasy. Grabs a base, saves his own, grabs a decent handful of Mutas. It's still a scary number of Mutas, and Bly is not stopping his production of them. Going up to 20 makes them very, very scary. Also, finally getting that +1 added on too. But losing that base while he's still not quite on the 5th was harsh. Looks like a bit of a Widow Mine drop here. Fantasy can now repair this, get missile turrets around it, and a planetary, but he's currently dealing with the Mutas flying around his base. He never bothered building a missile turret in his main, and this missile turret, even if it was in a proper place, would not live for very long. Unlikely that the Mutas will go this direction of the Widow Mines, but he's hoping that they will. He also can't go this direction. There are Marines, but because Fantasy's not... There we go. Responding immediately, he just loses 24 SCVs. If he gets all of the Mutas here... Oh my god. Oh my god, okay, that's worth it. Pretty sure losing all the Mutas is not worth 24 SCVs, even though 24 SCVs is really, really good. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh no, though. Oh no, though. Let's put a cam location hockey on that one. Oh no. This could do. Okay, so how many Mutas died? 19 Mutas died for overall what is 25 SCVs, and it's not like Bly has had a perfect economy behind this, losing that base, losing some drones. Now chasing down a single Widow Mine drop opens up this path entirely. Bly will not see this coming until it's on his creep, of which there is a modest amount, but not amazing. Bly is currently banking a lot of minerals as well. He's going to try and get up to the hive with this infestation pit, but it looks like he's having trouble building as many lings as he really can. Not quite clearing up the creeps for there's a very large army, and it is getting into position, but Bly's not going to go for the defense, at least not entirely for the defense. He has a large portion of his army going for the attack. Not as many Mutas as there could have been, but that's still a good number, as again, he never stopped really making them. Back up to 16, going up to 18. Fantasy is going to take out this base and maybe a number of drones, but he is going to return home to make sure this doesn't snowball on top of his production, which is always the worst case scenario. With the lings on top of your production, that is going to take way too long to clean up. 19 SCVs died to the 8s, 12 more workers dying of Bly, so it might just trade out evenly, but again, if the Mutas die, I don't think it's an even trade. Fantasy currently skyrocketing up in the supply, despite being supply blocked. Gonna get some last minutes of Widowmine hits here. Even if the Widowmines die, whatever they hit probably will be worth it. A little drop to the south side makes it so the worker's kill count goes favorably for our Terran player. He even managed to save the third CC. Bly didn't bother trying to target that one down, and Fantasy is looking to take game number 2 with these 3/3 upgrades on the way, +2 armor for his Medivacs and those Widowmines. Things are looking good. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the middle attack path not ever really being used, so the Baneling Bombs are not going to bring this game back. That's a relatively easy cleanup, but this is not an easy cleanup. We now have some hefty Marauders on the front line to make sure the Banelings just can't simply roll forward in higher numbers. Thor as well to help out against the Mutas. Drop over to the top left side, already unloaded, means that even if he responded to it with the Mutas, he'd lose 1 or 2. And looks like it will be getting a freebie cancel. Probably kill on this base, because Bly won't be paying attention to it. I guess this base is no longer protected at all. No walls, no missile turrets. Could be an easy fix. Oh, only 2 Marines go for it. Now it should be canceled. Nope, still wasn't fast enough to the draw. Alrighty then. Mutas finally clean up that top left drop, but it already got 300 minerals worth of damage done. Probably sniped a Muta, maybe 2. Probably just the 1. Baneling Bombs, I guess he is now replaced or maximize their effectiveness. You only need 2 to kill all those Marines. They're well spread out as well. Mutas are going to be the comeback tool for Bly here. As many punches as he took right to the face, he has managed to keep his supply above water. He is going on to the Hive, so he can advance his tech as well, which he'll have to, because Fantasy Army is now just too well upgraded. Too damn good. But the Mutas can buy a lot of time. In this count, at 20 with +2 on the way, they can buy a lot of time. They can cause things to snowball, so that when Fantasy thinks he has things under control, suddenly he doesn't. They're going to be able to grab Medivacs that are off here and there, and suddenly Fantasy doesn't realize he has to replace them. He doesn't have any healing for the push. I mean, things can happen with Mutas. I've always really loved Muta play because I think they do have that really high skill cap, right? The best players of Mutas make them look totally overpowered. But I'm not saying that they're always the greatest comeback tool. Obviously, if they were, then they would not have been out of the meta for as long as they were. I guess it was more that Hive just got better, but you get my point. Widowmine drop kills 9 drones. Really nice of Fantasy to continue dropping here and there little bits and pieces. And with Widowmine drops, you usually get away with a Medivac, so it's really quite efficient. This is Fantasy's main base. And even though the Mutas are what I've been talking about lately and that they've been bouncing around the bases, Ling run-bys are still going to be a problem, as those are where going to be upgraded. We're going to have 3/3 Lings with Adrenal Glands unless Fantasy goes for the kill move right now. He is up 50, almost 60 army supply. He would win a direct army fight, but Bly is going to try his best ever to give him a direct army fight. I also want to take a quick second to commend Bly on sorry, his creep spread. I think his creep tumor queens have been left alive or he's replaced them, not sure which one. And he has been pretty insistent on replacing the creep. I think this is a game that's gone, really heavily in favor of Fantasy. There was a time where he was everywhere at once. It would have been very easy to lose your queens and then to stop replacing creep. And if there is no creep, Bly looks so much farther behind in this game. I also like the idea of the Infestors. Although they probably shouldn't get too great of juicy hits. They might help out a little bit. Drop out to left side, grabs a gas geyser, which Bly does need. He's not banking on either minerals or gas. Still waiting on the Ultra's upgrade of Chitinous Plating. There are now 2 Ultra upgrades, never forget. Ultra's got that speed upgrade as well. Although I believe that it's just a complete buff, right? Or am I wrong? Actually, you know what, chat? Let me know what it is. Did they get their speed nerfed unless they have the speed upgrade, or is it just a pure buff that they're normal ultras and then they get speed buffed? Because I think that's what it is, right? Whatever. For now, they're going to be used defensively. They're not really going to want to take a fight. Just kind of want to stop one from happening. As Fantasy's army is still a little too good. Fantasy's also really rolling the dough here. He's going to want to start transitioning into things that are safer to deal with against Ultras. There is the Ultra Speed, by the way. So Liberators make things a little easier. Ghosts, if he can control them correctly, make things easier. And to continue on with his upgrades, so +3 armor for, you know, Liberators, Thors, Medevacs, all that good stuff. I would like to see more command centers, more command centers. Usually at this point you see like 4 or 5 dropped even. If it was TY, I guarantee there's 4 command centers dropped. A couple of orbitals and then 2 to take the planetaries as you clean up the creep spread. Which again, really good stuff that Bly even has it. Much less that it's actually kind of far out. Far out, man. Ghosts will be a very important asset here. Fantasy has a very chunky army that won't be obliterated just by a good number of banelings and a fungal. I mean, if it's all clumped up, it won't do too well, let's be real, but it'll be good enough. So if you add the Anchor, that is the Liberator, if you add the Ghost, making sure that Bly never wants to try and engage with it, right? Or he's going to get sniped to death. And suddenly, Bly's literal only choice, of which it has been kind of his only choice for the past 10 minutes, but now really his only choice will be to go around the army until he finds a better, more comfortable composition and more comfortable economy. 5 base is not exactly ideal at 20 minutes in the game. Ideally, he's got this one and, you know, probably this one. This one's always tricky to grab, of course, because drops are really effective against it. Tries to go for a Ling run by, is stopped right in his tracks. I don't know what happened with those burrowed banelings, but I guess they were scanned, or he figured they wouldn't do well because the creep's out here. It's like the weird downside of good creep spread is that your baneling bombs aren't going to be as effective. Like, what? Oops. Fantasy is, you know, withdrawing a little bit. It looks like he was planning on attacking, but then got a little nervous with the idea of run-bys. Got a little nervous because he didn't have an anti-Ultralisk army, which I think it's the safe call for sure. So that was not the time for Bly to try and run by. Now it might be the time for him to do so. But there are sensor towers to give Fantasy a huge alert to it. Now Fantasy's maxed out, so even if he knew about the run by, it might be hard to clean up. But can Bly afford to even send 20, 30 lings that way, as good of upgrades as they have? This is a really nice position. On top of the cliff, the ghosts are getting quite a few freebie snipes. You can now tell the Ultras have their boosts, their speed upgrade, because they got little speed lines. EMPs attempt to go off on the Infestors, but to be honest, they can miss every single one. Misses it again. There, finally hits one, but only after the ghosts are fungal, so that means no snipe, and Fantasy's gigantic army suddenly gets absolutely melted. Finally, a couple of snipes are going to go in here, and they do go off before the Mutas can come and save the day. But a couple of Ultras are still left alive. Not too healthy, but Fantasy just lost an incredible amount of army in one fell swoop, and Bly now has the means to go for the victory. Fantasy, his army was good, but I think his positioning was very awkward once Bly had got some units to the top side and the south side, and his attempts to EMP just didn't work out, and his ghosts were clumped up on the front lines, ready to be fungaled if Bly was allowed to get close enough. Things absolutely backfired, but Bly might be forced to give more credit to Fantasy than he should. Okay, no, he's just waiting for the Broodlords. You think that was a gigantic Terran army they took out until suddenly 50, Marines come forward, and you're like, oh, wait, no, never mind. But no, he's waiting for the Broodlords. A couple snipes do go down, weaken most of them, but oh, classic mistake. One more snipe on each of these Broodlords, and suddenly you're only dealing with one. Not that 4 is really that difficult to deal with, and it looks like Fantasy will just barely hold on. Maybe if Bly just flooded in with Lings and Ultras and Banelings, had not had to wait for the Broodlords, maybe this base would have died. But I guess Fantasy did have a lot of bases to give up before he really had to tap out. But things have certainly been reset. Fantasy has had to use that big old bank he was able to grab. He didn't exactly out-expand his opponent. I mean, he had one more expansion, right, than his opponent, but he didn't go crazy. Lucia's kind of a small map, so it'd be kind of hard to, but maybe there was an opening. It's a little late now. Now he's trying to get the planetaries up. But Bly's also getting his fast units up again. Lots of Lings on the way, and he could just do run-bys on lone planetaries. When SCVs aren't pre-set up for the repair, fully maxed out Lings will kill planetaries, even with building armor. of which, okay, he does have. All right, so we're kind of fully maxed out in the upgrades. There's Liberator range, finally. Do you go for any other armory upgrades here? It's kind of like a why not with the +1 ship weapons. I'm not sure there's any kill count difference versus Zerg for Liberators and ship weapons, but if you were banking a lot, and usually if you're making Liberators, you are in a very long game where you're banking a little bit, then you would go for ship weapons. But as I said, things have kind of been reset. Bottom right base was taken out. This left base is the one he's going to defend successfully. All right. And this top left, I mean, the corners of the map are going to be really hard for both of them to deal with. Work account, surprisingly even. Bly, I guess because he's been on a low hatchery count, I guess, low base count on a lot of these games because he's been getting his hatchery sniped. Fantasy certainly had a lead for a lot of this game. So I guess he hasn't really had to go above that, 50 drones, but I would think you'd want to go up more to 60 and maybe even up to a very powerful 65-70 now that you have more bases. Right now, he has bigger things to deal with. He has an army to deal with, of which he has now fallen behind in the army supply by about 30. This base is a goner. It's not happening. 50-50. He took both corners, and one will survive. Oh, that's... Ooh, lordy, that's going to be oversaturated. Sneaky ghost, boys! Sneaky ghost, boys! Sneaky ghost, boys! There's overseers, though. They're going to go for the EMPs, or they're going to run away? Run away! Lordy, run! Okay, he's gonna try and get the EMPs, but it's not really the perfect setup he was hoping for. I'm pretty sure he's just hoping there weren't overseers. Those were very bold ghosts. Uh-oh. I don't see any splash in this army. I don't see a very powerful Terran army that's currently simmed and not yet healed up. I wasn't even currently simmed, it was just still damage from simming. Oh, there's the rest of the army. Still a lot of splash, and when you're in the situation, I do like Terrans that get like 3 or 4 tanks at least. Woodamines could be reliable as well, but the point is some type of splash just to set around their bases so that run-bys don't destroy their economy, as well as the tricky, like, I'm focusing so much on the tier 3 units, the tier 1, tier 2 units kill me thing that happens sometimes can be negated if you have just a couple of splash units. That is a lot of Liberators. I mean, Liberators aren't really what you want against Lings, like, a lot of the time, but if you have 13 Liberators, you're going to be killing a lot of Lings fast enough, I guess. Another 1 hour game on our hands? I mean, maybe. You would think Blue Shifts wouldn't have enough bases for it, but these guys might be determined to prove that wrong. A single Ghost Academy again, so only a single nuke. We'll see if he uses that nuke in an offensive position as a harassment option. Bly is now on 2 full new extra bases, and he does go back up to 65 drones. Nailed it. But there are positions that can be lost if his army is lost, and he's not banking enough yet to replace an army, so everything really does still hinge on him taking a rather good engagement. These Liberators will be very difficult to deal with because there's just so damn many of them. They're going to do a great job protecting the ghosts. There's even those Woodamines on the front lines. Run-bys would be a good option at this point, I suppose. But Bly doesn't have a whole ton of Lings to do that. Where are those Corruptors? He has a lot of Corruptors. He's going to have to abduct those Liberators. And then I think he has enough to take them down fast, but 7 Corruptors really isn't a lot. It's a very hard army to deal with when the Terran is allowed to just completely focus on the slow siege up of Liberators and Ghosts. It's almost an impossible army for the Zerg to deal with. It's when the Zerg is forcing them to spread out and deal with many different locations that suddenly that army is, well, it's unsieged, it's not sniping, so on and so forth, and it dies. But Fantasy, just with a little bit of a hop forward here, manages to take out 2 bases, and now Bly feels the necessity to go for the attack. He still has some units in here to help the Corruptors take out the Liberators, but oh my god, the Liberators did so much damage. Infested Terrans were instantly melted. Everything that went under it was just gone in a flash. So many Ghosts are left over, and not a lot of bio, and I think the Woodamines have all died or have been left behind as well. No Fungos left over for the Ghosts, but Broodlings, Banelings, Ultras all come rushing through to stop their snipes. A couple went off. Not enough to kill all the Broodlords. In fact, most of these Broodlords still very, very healthy. The air army of Bly still healthy, so the game will still continue. But I do think that it's a situation where Bly might have kept his head, but he lost his legs and his arms. He really needed one of those bases to survive. He's currently trying to get this one. This one's also being rebuilt, so I guess he does still have some potential mining. And Fantasy is on the job. He's going to the top left, making sure that's not a freebie. And Bly doesn't have enough minerals to replace any other hatcheries. Oh, well, he's not going to the very top left yet, but I think he will eventually. Oh, what? What? Hey, what? He just didn't have enough mutas. No support for the mutas means that the drop is successful. It's going to now be even more successful to the top left. Fantasy has locked this game down. Bly cannot replace an army after a fight like that. Even though Broodlord's going to be tough to deal with, and he's got some anti-air to support it. He's lost all of his spellcasters. Currently you're building 3 infestors. And nothing on the ground to support them either. Makes things a lot easier for the Terran to micro against. It really, really does. Fantasy has been on the space for quite some time. He is now currently getting a new base, because he was also starting to run out of minerals, I guess, a little bit. But he always had so many bases that he could have floated around desperately if he ever did get desperate. He wasn't the one that really had to worry about that. Just Terran things. So what is Bly's plan here? I mean, with the Infestors, he's really going with the idea of the Broodlords winning the game. And hey, they did it last game. That was a much larger map with also a very different composition from Fantasy. And it was mech versus bio. So this feels like a game that Fantasy just simply can't let go. And then supplies weren't nearly as different at any point in last game. This is an almost 100 supply leads, 40, 50-ish army supply lead. No bases for Bly. No bases for you. And we'll be seeing the tap out soon enough. So no hour and 20-minute game this time, but more like a 30, 35-minute one. Oh my god, I'm snipes. Oh, it was beautiful. If you're a Terran player. Doesn't quite get the last few Broodlords, and his Liberators will die for it. In fact, his Ghosts will die for it as well. Good trade there for our Zerg player, but now plummeting down to 65 supply. As this little tiny rampaging set of units goes on to his 5th base, gets that, and the Broodlords have to slowly come back all alone as well. So these Marines, I think, could even take them out. All alone. Doing things. I'm really sad I didn't see any burrowed banelings. We saw 3 and they didn't do anything. Bly has some high hopes about these Broodlords. He's probably figured out, because I think he saw the SCGs coming to mind, that this is now a Terran base. His tech structures could now be something that Fantasy intentionally targets, knowing that Bly cannot respond in due time. But Fantasy could also just go for the win. GG. Alright. Game number 2 goes in Fantasy's favor. That's a 1-1 tied score. But it's not even a qualifying match. Ooh, 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 ooh. I ran out of water. Oh. Qualifiers are 2 days for each region, kind of. I mean, Korean qualifiers, there's 2 of them, so. But today is the first part. Tomorrow is the second part of the European server qualifiers. Bly's currently watching that last game. Sometimes he does this. Not that I mind the break, I guess. Alright, there he is. I'm going to accept the lobby invite. I'll wait till they're in game and I'll go get water. Fantasy's not invited yet. Be right back in water. Ugh. Alrighty then. I mean, as far as what I expect from a European qualifier, this is as long as I would expected. But, considering how the bracket was supposed to look, and the trajectory of the bracket today, it probably should not last 5 hours, but it will. This is game number 3, which is probably going to last around 15 minutes at least. And then they have to face Bunny in the round of 16 qualifier match, which is the best of 5. So I'm guessing 5 hours. We do have some results for the qualifications elsewhere. I'll get into that after the introductions. Nope, wrong button. Annoying. In the bottom left is the orange Zerg. It is Bly. In the top right as the blue Terran. He is Fantasy. So let's look at the bracket, since no one's doing anything cheesy. Special was able to 3-1 Clem to take the qualifying spot. Again, qualifying for tomorrow, so they're not done yet. DNS versus Hellraiser is still going. It's PvP, I believe. Oh, Hellraiser beat Keen. Stuart versus Ziggy is still happening. Ziggy's doing probably his cheesy Reaper stuff. Weird playstyle that he beat Denver earlier today with, that we get to see if you're on this channel from the get-go. Marine Lord is facing Hero after 2-0ing Namshar, so a very strong presence from a guy who's come back much more recently than Namshar. I mean, Namshar has been playing for a very long time. He's really had the most, like, trackable standard rise through the ranks, right? Like, you'd probably track his MMR and it's very stable. It might be a slower process than he was hoping for or that we've seen from other people, and that can suck, but he is certainly a steady, very consistent player. For Marine Lord to come back and be able to 2-0 him, it is only one qualifier, only one best of 3, but it is a good sign. But now Marine Lord has to face Hero, and Hero is Hero, and Hero is also Protoss, so we could see how, I wish we could see how that's going to go. We are not. They're currently in game. Gumiho took out Cyan 3-0 to advance on. Soul versus Rail is happening. It's EVP, I'm pretty sure. Bunny is waiting for the winner of this. Neeb did, in fact, 3-0, sort of, to advance on. So, that's the update here, guys. Not too many qualifying matches left, and this one will certainly be the last one. Or one of these two will certainly be in the last one. There you go. Ugh. If you would like to see who they're facing tomorrow, by the way, guys, you can always go to Wikipedia. They will have the bracket and the seeded players there. So a lot of your favorites that you're like, why aren't they playing today? They're European. Well, that's probably because they're already seeded in. Like Lambo here, Marine, Showtime. It's really in fall, and typically on this map we see far more 2-base layers from Zerg than any other. Whether it's ZVZ or ZVT? Question mark. Serious question mark. Usually, if they're going to go for a very fast layer versus any race besides Zerg, there's the kind of almost fake third going down, right? So you're kind of keeping up appearances that you're going into 3 bases, but you don't get a lot of drones, and you do have more gas than usual, and obviously you have a layer faster than usual. So Fantasy should be a little wary of this. I mean, I've seen 2-base Zerg versus Protoss. I don't really see it very often versus Terran unless you're cheesing. So Fantasy should be like, okay, where is it at? What are you doing? And I'm a little surprised that he's not trying to suicide something in, but maybe that's what the Hellions are for. I'm also questioning what Bly is doing. He has yet to slap down any tech structure despite the lair being done. He, in fact, got a little supply blocked, but if he was waiting for a tech structure, that doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, there finally the Spire goes down. It's what I was expecting, but he was waiting a long time to do it. So, after seeing no third base, what's going through Fantasy's head is probably, you know, first Nidus Worm. Try and, when you order these things, do it in the most dangerous thing as possible first. And Nidus Worm is probably the most dangerous. Second, maybe just like a good old-fashioned like roach across the map push, I suppose. But then eventually you go down to a Spire, which 2-base Spire isn't inherently powerful. Like, you don't get a lot of mutas from it. You don't have a lot of lings with it either. It is tricky. You don't see it coming. You get overwhelmed. You're going mech. You don't have any Thors. You have the supply depots down. Lings get in with the few amount of mutas that they made. Suddenly, that gets tricky as well. But usually, disregarding any surprise, just whoop, I ended the game right then and there because I went for faster mutas than you expected. Usually, this just gives you a big boost to the muta count early on. So that you have like a good number of like 15 by, what, 10 minutes? By the time things really start getting ramped up. Probably more like 8 minutes or 9 minutes. But anyways, it all comes down to whether or not you survive, though. Like, if Fantasy deals with a 2-base muta, no problem, has everything ready to go, and just does his macro thing, Bly's gonna have, you know, later upgrades, later centrifugal hooks, not even a lot of banelings to begin with. Wow, he managed to get 10 mutas right off the bat. It's been so long since I've seen 2-base mutas, but yeah. He didn't have to make any defensive units. Fantasy didn't go for any Hellbat push or anything. So 10 mutas right off the bat means that, yeah, he's gonna be up to like 15 by, I mean, 7 or 8. Jeez, probably 7. Well, we'll see. Like, he could be very content with 10 mutas right off the bat, and then, yeah, exactly, put his gas and minerals into upgrades, both flyer and ground, as well as drones, which is something he will have to do. You can't just try and build up a massive muta count and go, haha, I have 20 mutas, but nothing else. So Fantasy does seem pretty underprepared, but I think it's only because of positioning. Looks like Fantasy is the under tutelage of the live missile turret placement. Which at this point, considering how many games that I've casted alive, it's just bad. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. You're being too clever for your own good is basically what the alive turret is. And if anyone's like, what the hell is she talking about? An alive turret is when you place it off to the direction that you think your opponent will be coming in through. So Banshees will come this direction, mutas might come this direction. When you go for 2-base muta, it's a bit of a gamble, since Bly knew that Fantasy knew. It's a bit of a gamble to be like head on like he did. But when you go for 2-base muta, that is an option. Just to be like, I think you have too few Marines to hold this. And the missile turret would have been very helpful. We wouldn't have lost nearly as much. Solid combat shields though, and that's finally finished. Oopsie pips. Said a little too long range that I wouldn't mind. Just took a lot of damage to help those Marines out, but he seriously hasn't taken on a lot of Marines. That's 18 Marines lost. Yes, for 5 mutas, which are more expensive. You gotta be very careful about snowballing, and this does contribute to a later / weaker push to Bly. So now hopefully Bly does have his upgrades, does have his banelings, so on and so forth, because Fantasy doesn't have nearly as much to push forward with and isn't nearly as confident pushing forward because he didn't take care of the mutas as securely as he really should have. I mean, 2-base Muta was, I mean, was, I don't know, considered kind of a, even like a lully build. I think in Heart of the Swarm, it wasn't that lulls. It was actually really, really dangerous, but even then, it was starting to really phase out. Terrans are getting too good at predicting it and defending against it. But it seriously can be very tricky, and certainly if it's out of the meta, which Mutas are back in, but, you know, it can be something that the Terran players really don't remember how to deal with or how deadly it can be. Those are really nice Widowmine shots. One Widowmine kills one Muta and then heavily splashes the other one, so it takes 4 Widowmines in total. I said that weird. 4 Widowmines in total to kill every single Muta if they're clumped up. But the severe damage on the Mutas is good enough as well, and Bly has basically lost his advantage in this game. The one thing he had going for them really was the fact that his Mutas were growing in number. He still doesn't have a strong economy, although he did just get to it, and if he was given another minute or two here, he would have an absolutely dominating economy and probably dominating creep spread. But losing the Mutas like that, now Fantasy has an opportunity to perhaps move across the map. It doesn't feel that way sometimes. Let's take a quick look at Fantasy's map vision. You know you've been pinned back. You know your first defense against the Mutas wasn't that great, but every other defense has been fantastic. Sometimes you're afraid. You don't have a lot of vision. It's okay to be afraid. Damn, these Widowmines are really powerful against Bly. So for all Fantasy knows, the creep spread's out to here, and there's 20 banelings with speed ready to roll on top of him once he tries to move out. So maybe he's being a little overly cautious based on what we know, which is that Bly was mostly on those Mutas and is only now getting a decent ground army. But it's not something Fantasy could have predicted. And now Bly's really kicking in a high gear. He's got both gas geysers filled out here, 76 drones. His ground army is now considerable. And while his Muta count should have been up to 20 by now if everything had gone according to plan, he still managed to survive what I would say is the vulnerable stage of a 2-base Muta opener, and Fantasy is just forced to play kind of a normal TDZ. Personally, I'd look way too much into the loss of the Mutas. If I was playing, I'd be like, oh, I win now, right? And that's just obviously not the case. Bly was macroing pretty heavily behind it, so even though it was a big pop-off, a big cut into the Mutas, those Mutas did take a long time to really, I guess, for Fantasy to feel confident against, and Fantasy also was just more about defending, more about making sure he didn't take any more damage. So we have a 4th base already almost done here. That's a really even quick timing, nice timing. Fantasy is not overestimating his position. He saw how big that army was with that drop and knows to be a little careful. He will have to be a little wary of Bly just maxing out and trying to go for a big old push, but we know that's not quite the case. In fact, Bly is simply having trouble with macro. It's like the 74 drone count kicked in, and he was, you know, oh great, it's time to go, but he didn't quite have enough larva to actually go with it. Even though he's on what is soon to be 6 hatcheries, right? Oh, this one's already done. But it's not injecting. But once, if he did not have 2,000, 1,000 in the bank, I think he'd be maxed, right? And if he was maxed, he could threaten Fantasy with a, hey, here comes the Baronlings. And if Fantasy has all his Widowmines clumped up, then he's dead. But Fantasy doesn't have his Widowmines clumped up in any danger. I will note that he has a hell of a lot of Widowmines. Good lord. He has been making those for quite some time. He might have even gone for that factory on the reactor of a barracks, when usually it would be the barracks, but the factory instead. And that's why he had so many to even deal with the Mutas. That's probably what happens. So now he's up to 19 Widowmines. Oh my god. That's enough to spread across the map and still have as many as the Zerg would expect with your main army. If Bly were to see this many Widowmines, he'd be like, oh, that's a fair number. Okay, that makes sense. But there's like 10 elsewhere. All spread out. Oh, that's kind of cool. So many Widowmines. These ones are spread out as well. They do have drilling claws, so they are hidden. They're going to be helpful against Ling run-bys. Planetary not quite done. Yeah, they're not fully upgraded Lings, and the army's already here, so no chance to kill the Planetary. Not really a worthwhile run-by, I would say. But while we're watching the Terran side of the map, Bly has continued his creep spread, is now going on his way up to a hive. Yeah, +2 Carapace on the way, too. Is that, oh, yeah, he's gonna have 2-2 on his mutas. So even though he's lost so many, he's back up to 25. He lost 24. He has replaced all the mutas that he's lost, and they're gonna have really good upgrades. Where is that happening? Where's that happening? What am I drop? What am I drop? Killed 13 drones. I was thinking about why these banelings were here, and then I realized they are to catch the transfer of SCVs that will most certainly happen to that right side base. 25 mutas, especially with 2-2, are certainly enough to take care of missile turrets as well as production centers. The Thor was accidentally shooting the Overseer, but let's also not forget that the Thor is inherently worse against mutas since the patch. They're better against Broodlords, worse against mutas. Sometimes the Terran player, you can really feel just like stuffed into your corner when it comes to mutas, but you have to have drops on this side of the map, their side of the map. So it's a good thing that he has these drops. This one doesn't do too much, but this one is going to catch an entire hatchery. And so far he is mostly taking care of the mutas. He did lose a Thor. He lost a facility, factory that is, and now knows, basically, assuming he's also clicking on the mutas, seeing their upgrades, he now knows that the mutas are no longer a joke. Like, they cannot be held against with a mass repair. They cannot be held against with 10 missile turrets even. I think 10 is still something that mutas could take on. The only thing that will take these on is either being aggressive with the army so they have to stay at home, or 4 Wood of Mines ready to pop off on them. We're back in the heart of the Swarm territory, where the only hope of an oppressed Terran is for 4 Wood of Mines to catch them off guard. Let's go back to the Jakshi days, if you guys remember him. Creepspread's still looking pretty decent, and even though he lost one base off to the left side, Bly took this one in the middle too. So Fantasy is still... I mean, he's still unable to really make Bly feel nervous. Not that that means he's necessarily down and out. I mean, they're both banking very similar resources. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. They're both banking very similar resources, and Fantasy is continuing a slower crawl to extra bases, but he is continuing to crawl. Well, there's definitely going to be a problem of dealing with the mutas the more that he expands, and Ling run-bys will also soon be a problem as they're going to be fully upgraded. Ultra's Cavern on the way along with 7 more mutas. Seriously, Bly is not stopping with them. He's going to go up to 34 mutas, and Fantasy has lost his reactor factory, and he has not replaced it. Wait, what? Wait, what? I hate when that happens. If a thing is like slightly out of the observer's vision, it won't jump to it. Jesus, there it is. God. Alright, so he does have a reactor factory, but I was paying attention to his production. Oh my god, oh my god. Oh, this is gonna be a few mutas. Oh, only 3. Almost a fantastic find. Anyways, I've been watching the production tab, and he's just not been building a lot of them, and I think that's his only hope. Like, if he decides to bring the army back by just doing a real push, and Bly feels the necessity to keep his mutas on his side of the map and help with the push, there's a chance that Bly just says, oh wait, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to kind of base race you, depend on his creep spread, depend on his bank, place hatches on the map, and then he just leaves the mutas anyways. There's always that choice for Bly, and the only way that you stop that choice from being a good one, or from even happening in the first place, is by having Wood of Mines littered around the map. It feels so dumb that that's your only option, but it sometimes is. So here we go, push comes to shove. Fantasy does have this left side base, but it's not super well protected. Bly could take care of that, and mutas will kill buildings, and this number with these upgrades, going to +3 attack per flyer, they will kill buildings rather quickly. But Fantasy's not just pushing with one army. He does have a drop off to the left side to help him kind of take, I guess, keep tabs on any drones that are perhaps looking to build more hatcheries, as well as just demolishing the ones that currently exist. I don't believe there's many Wood of Mines left over. Oh, no, there are. Oh, but they're with the army. Okay, so I didn't see any back at home, and that's why I didn't see any. Thor is just looking really, really dumb against the mutas, to be honest. Missile turrets. Nope, those are missile platypus. He's supply blocked. He can't build any more Wood of Mines. Oh, very awkward stuff here. So it's a natural command center. Ooh. It's a natural command center for what ends up being 2 hatcheries. No, 3 hatcheries. You got this one as well. That's right. Which is favorable for Fantasy. But Bly has a much bigger bank, and his muta count is still going strong. It's down from 34 to 25. But But I thought 25 was rather good to begin with, so. Nothing besides missile turrets over here. But the army is on the Muta's tail, so another base saved for our Terran player. I would really, honestly, I would have liked for Fantasy to go in a faster building armor and high-sec auto tracking. It's like almost not even worth it though, because these Mutas will tear them down so fast. Oh. But there was a time where he was starting to bank, and I was like, maybe that would have been a good choice. It's far gone now. Fantasy is going to be focused entirely on building up his army. It's a little overstand. It's also really clumped up. He's going to want to split up the Marauders as well. It's usually not efficient for Banelings to crash into Marauders. When they're all clumped up, it's good enough sometimes. Most of the Woodmines have been popped off. The army's looking a lot smaller. Planetary is up for grabs for the Mutas, and now they're down to a count of 29. Oh, just kidding. They're up in a count. Bly's gonna lose another base, so it's a base for a base, and I guess this one was canceled too. But these two bases are back up soon enough. And Fantasy has no drops going over there. Mutas come back to deal with what ended up being a couple of Woodland Mines still popping off left and right, but not enough. And the whole army of Fantasy is cleaned up. Fantasy did such a good job, kind of like to the early mid-game point of defending against the Mutas, but has lost control over this game. Very desperate attack. Does not turn out well for the Terran player. And Bly still banking. Banking a lot. Mass Mutas. I did not miss you. Did not miss you. So Fantasy's whole approach for a lot of this game of being kind of just slow and steady is now an approach that will no longer work out, but neither will an attempt to all in. So he's basically just dead. It's just gone. Fantasy didn't scout these bases, so he's just getting a drop off of the right side now. And it's good. Like, that's what you gotta do. But Bly has never had to send his ground army to the opposite side of the map. He hasn't had to. Now he is, but he hasn't had to. Mutas have been doing a decent enough job on their own, haven't they? There's always going to be Lings to take care of this, or whatever else is available back at home. Bly's only using a portion of his army. It's still a large portion, but only a portion of his army to do the damage that he's doing. It'd be really hard for Fantasy to get real damage done with drops. Fantasy doesn't want to tap out yet. He still has production. He still has orbitals. He still has a lot of mules to drop. And if all these Mutas died to 4 Woodland Mines, well, he'd still be dead, but it'd be something. It'd be fireworks. $11 more Mutas. Fantasy's down to 11 SCVs, so they did just drop 11 mules. Oh my god. It's gonna be a lot of income. Ow, 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 ow. Oh, mules. We knew you. I think they only got like 1 trip. Planetary dies anyway. All those 3-3 Marines shooting at those Mutas, and Bly did not care about that. Now I've been taking this middle base, which, I mean, I really don't take this base taken ever on Cerulean Falls. Bly could start taking offensive bases if he wanted. If he really wanted to rub Fantasy's nose into it. Ah! Or he could do this. You could just take on every single Marine with Mutas and win. GG. GG.